Morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
See Donovan West over there. Good morning, sir. This is the public hearing and public meeting of the Committee of the Whole regarding bills number 260199, 260200, 260201, 260202, 260203, 260204, 260205, 260206, 260208, 260209, and resolution number 260227. Ms. Lawhead, would you please call the roll and take attendance?
Councilmember Squilla, Councilmember Gautier, Councilmember Jones, Councilmember Young, Councilmember Driscoll, Councilmember Lozada, Councilmember Bass, Councilmember Phillips, Councilmember O'Neill, Councilmember Gilmore Richardson, Councilmember Thomas, Councilmember Harity, Councilmember Ahmed, Councilmember Landau, Councilmember Brooks, Councilmember O'Rourke, Council President Johnson.
Present. A full house today. Thank you, Ms. Lawhead. A quorum of the committee is present, and this hearing is now called to order. Ms. Lawhead, will you please read the title of the bills and resolutions?
Bill number 260199, an ordinance adopting the operating budget for fiscal year 2027. Bill number 260200, an ordinance to adopt a fiscal year 2027 capital budget. Bill number 260201, an ordinance to adopt a capital program for the 6 fiscal years 2027 through 2032 inclusive. Bill number 260202, an ordinance amending Chapter 19-2400 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Hotel Room Rental Tax by providing for an additional excise tax on hotel room rentals, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 260203, an ordinance amending Subcode A, the Philadelphia Administrative Code of Title IV of the Philadelphia Code, the Building, Construction, and Occupancy Code, by adding and revising zoning board of adjustment fees and provisions regarding hearing scheduling, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 260204, an ordinance amending Title III of the Philadelphia Code entitled Air Management Code to modify the amounts of license and permit fees under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 260205, an ordinance amending Section 19-1806 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Authorization of Realty Use and Occupancy Tax to clarify the imposition of the tax on the use or occupancy of real estate with respect to cell towers, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 260206, an ordinance amending Chapter 600 of the Philadelphia Code Asbestos by adding and revising provisions related to various fees, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 260208, an ordinance amending Chapter 19-1800 of the Philadelphia Code entitled School Tax Authorization to add a new Section 19-1808 entitled Authorization of Rideshare Use Tax to authorize the Board of the School District of Philadelphia to levy a tax upon the use by a passenger of a transportation network company for a pre-arranged ride that originates in Philadelphia, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 260209, an ordinance amending Title 19 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Finance, Taxes, and Collections to add a new Chapter 19-4800 entitled Retail Delivery Tax to establish a tax on orders for the delivery in Philadelphia of retail consumer and other tangible goods, all under certain terms and conditions. And resolution number 260227, providing for the approval by the Council of the City of Philadelphia of a revised 5-year financial plan for the City of Philadelphia covering fiscal years 2027 through 2031, and incorporating revisions with respect to fiscal year 2026, which is to be submitted by the mayor to the Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority pursuant to an intergovernmental cooperation agreement by and between the city and the authority.
Thank you very much. Today we hold the public hearing of the Committee of the Whole to consider bills read by the clerk that constitute proposed operating capital spending measures for fiscal year 2027, a capital program, and a forward-looking capital plan for fiscal year 2027 through fiscal year 2032. This morning we have scheduled testimony from the administration on the proposed revenue adjustments in the Office of Property Assessment. Ms. Lawyer, will you please call the first panel to testify from the administration?
The first witness to testify is Rob DeBoe, Finance Director.
Good morning.
Morning.
Rob, just state for the record your name and please begin your testimony, sir.
Great, thanks. Good morning, Council President Johnson, members of the committee. My name is Rob Dubo. I'm a finance director. I am joined by Revenue Commissioner Kathleen McCulkin, Executive Director of the Office of Homeless Services, Cheryl Hill, Streets Commissioner Kristen Del Rossi, and Chief Education Officer Dr. Deborah Carrera, and other administration officials. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today on the various revenue measures included in the proposed FY27 budget and FY27 to FY31 five-year plan. Our proposed budget and five-year plan includes $642 million in crucial new operating investments over 5 years to pursue the Mayor's vision to make Philadelphia the safest, cleanest, and greenest big city in the nation with access to economic opportunity for all. The proposal builds on the progress of the last 2 years and dedicates new resources to address urgent needs facing Philadelphia. As always, the administration remains committed to fiscal responsibility and long-term stability as we maintain stability through significant challenges in this uncertain federal and economic environment. At the expiration of federal COVID relief funding, potential federal regulatory changes, high legacy costs, including a balloon payment in FY29, careful planning is essential. As part of the budget process, every department prepared 1% and 2% cut scenarios, and more than $200 million in low service impact cuts were incorporated into the plan. Even with those reductions, by FY29, our reserves reached the bottom of our target range. Because of these constraints, any new or expanded key service investments require new recurring revenue sources. The proposals before you are targeted to specific funds and dedicated to funding for those key services. The Park Administration does not take lightly proposals to raise taxes or fees, but the revenue generated through these proposed changes will allow us to continue the progress made over the last 2 years and support efforts to end street homelessness, keep our streets safe, sustain key city services, and avoid devastating cuts to our schools. With that, I'm going to turn it over to the people who joined me at the table to give more specifics on the services we'll be funding, and we'll start with Cheryl Hill.
Good morning. Cheryl Hill, Executive Director of the Office of Homeless Services. As a key investment in homeless services, the plan includes $110 million over 5 years to add 1,000 shelter beds with wraparound services, expand hours and services at the Hub of Hope, and increase encampment resolution capacity. To support this investment, we propose a 2 percentage point increase to the hotel room rental tax beginning August 1st, 2026, generating approximately $20 million annually. Even with this increase, Philadelphia's rate remains aligned with other major cities. In addition, the administration continues to have discussions with the hospitality industry about the proposal.
Good morning, everyone. Streets Commissioner Kristen Del Rossi. To improve our streets, the plan proposes a 25-cent retail delivery tax on certain taxable retail goods delivered in Philadelphia. Essential medicine are exempt. This revenue will support the One Philly Pothole Squad and strengthen our ability to deliver proactive and reactive street condition repairs.
Good morning, Council. My name is Dr. Deborah Carrera. I'm the Chief Education Officer. As a key investment in quality education, the plan includes 2 proposals generating more than $50 million annually for the school district. A $1 transportation network company tax on rideshare trips beginning January 2027, and a modernization of the use and occupancy tax for cell towers by basing it on bandwidth rather than square footage. With this revenue and the district's own efficiencies, approximately 340 school-based positions can be retained, avoiding harmful cuts that would otherwise be necessary. It is also our hope that if the city approves this new revenue, the Commonwealth will continue building on the progress made in Harrisburg so our schools have the foundation they need to succeed.
And attached to the testimony, our administration's proposed amendments to certain bills. For the rideshare tax, the amendments proposed raising the tax to $1 and changing the implementation date to January 1st. And for the ZBA fees, there are some technical amendments. We're requesting council adopt those amendments. We're available for any questions regarding the proposals. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Chair recognizes, let me go back to a question that was asked regarding the rideshare tax from Councilmember Jim Harity some time ago. He asked, is there a way for us to look at trying to find ways where the fees will impact the actual rider? And at that time, I know the administration said they will look into it. Has any progress been made in regards to what that may look like?
So I think,
Some level of relief for the actual driver.
yeah, so I think we are open to changes that comply with the Uniformity Act, but that does give a kind of a fairly large constraint on what we can do.
And I didn't mean to say driver, I meant to say
The riders.
the rider. Okay. And also, I had another question regarding when we look at the hotel tax, right? And we know sometimes the market can be volatile. It can go up, it can go down. How is that taken in consideration in terms of the usage of our hotels?
Yeah, when we looked at that rate, the additional 2%, and looked at what it would mean for a room of $200, it's a $4 change. So we didn't think that was going to have a major impact. We've also seen that there are other places that are looking at their hotel tax. In Chicago just announced a proposal to raise theirs to 19%, which would be higher than what we're proposing.
And I think there was data that talked about when we look at, it's a claim that 1% of low-income residents relied on rideshare for commuting. And so one, where does that data come from? Or could you provide that data to members of council just for us to review?
Yes, it comes from the Census Bureau, and we will definitely provide that to you.
And does that include late-night workers?
Yeah, that's all workers.
Just in general.
Less than 1% of workers making under $50,000 use rideshare to commute.
And just in general, in the event that this is moved forward, is there any consideration for exemptions for seniors and those who have disabilities?
So I think we're open to anything that's consistent with the uniformity clause, so long as it doesn't eat into revenue by too much.
Okay. Chair recognizes Councilmember Kathleen Gilmore Richardson.
Thank you, Council President. I'll reserve the balance of my questions for OPA. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilman Dr. Anthony Phillips.
Thank you, Council President. I have the question regarding for the ZBA fee amendment. The Zoning Board of Adjustment application fee is proposed to increase from $300 to $811, which is a 170% increase. So that's a significant jump, particularly for homeowners and small applicants who are already navigating a complex process. I want to know what cost analysis determined this increase and justifies it, and where does the revenue generate from these applications? Where will this new revenue that's coming in, where will it go?
Yep. So these are fees that had not been increased in a while, and as you know, fees cannot exceed the cost of the service, so we did an analysis of those costs. We also are exempting 1 and 2 building properties. So we did take into account that affordability for the smaller developments.
And the revenue,
The revenue goes into the general fund from that.
it just goes to the general fund.
Yes.
And based on how much additional revenue is the city projected to receive as a result of this into the general fund? I mean that was a huge jump.
It's about $500,000 annually, about $2.5 million over our 5-year plan.
Okay, can we count, you said 500, say it again?
Yes, $500,000 annually, about $2.5 million over the 5-year plan.
And that's different from what was the previous revenue?
Hold on one second, sorry.
Oh, well, she's back. I don't want to be, as you're coming, I just want to quickly ask, are we expect to see improvements in service timelines and communication to applicants in return for this increased costs?
Yes, we should see improved performance.
Can we get on record in terms of it later on and now, like what that will look like?
Yes, we can get you that.
Okay, and then my next question was just around the rideshare tax. I'm just curious about it. I'm all about children and kids, but I just want to understand what does the track record of rideshare taxes in other cities tell us about long-term revenue stability? After implementation, did those cities see revenue remain stable over time, or did they see a decline in usage?
Yeah, I can tell you what's happened here with the state tax, the 1.4 million. Other than in the pandemic, it's been relatively stable with some growth.
Okay, and were there conversations with the rideshare companies prior to this decision being made?
There have been discussions with them since we introduced it.
So just recent, okay. So I'm just trying to make sure that we can work it out where if this tax does go through, it could go, the companies would take on the tax as support as opposed to the riders. But like you said, the uniformity clause may not allow that, is that correct?
Now, the uniformity clause doesn't allow us to do different rates for different types of
Right,
customers,
that part, yes.
But in terms of the rideshare company deciding to assume those costs on behalf of their customers, the uniformity clause doesn't have anything to do with that.
Right, and so they're choosing not to do that, and now it's going to impact the customers, right? And I think that right now is $1. I just want to make sure, are you going to be advocating in years to come anytime soon for it to go up above $1?
We have no plans to do that. Our projections are for it to stay at the $1.
Okay.
Chair recognizes Councilmember Jeffrey J. Young.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a point of information, when it was just mentioned that the rideshare companies are choosing to pass that on to the rider, but the legislation itself specifically states that the transportation network companies are acting as the agent for the Board of Education and shall collect the tax from the passenger. So the legislation says that they have to collect the tax from the passenger.
Yeah,
So-
they can then decide how they want to pass that on, right? They can decide whether they're going to increase their fee to account for that, or whether they're just going to basically hold their riders harmless. That's a decision they can make.
So are you saying, Rob,
No, you're good.
are you saying, Rob, legally you can't
Yes.
say that the rideshare company has to take on this particular tax? As
Yes.
opposed, okay, I just wanted to make sure that that was clear to folks.
I think we have more information on the ZBA question you had.
Yeah.
Yes. Good morning, Sabrina Maynard, Budget Director. So the current estimate in the current year for ZBA fees is just under about $300,000. So we're really behind in collecting the cost of providing this service. So that's what we're bringing in now, about $300,000. And I should add that with the increase, we will actually still be behind the rates of the surrounding counties. So we will still be comparatively low, even with the increase.
Yeah, that's incredibly helpful to understand. I'm just more concerned about whether or not we're going to see for sure the revenue that we expect. How confident are you that we're going to get that revenue? Because if it's for the children, we got to make sure we have that revenue, right?
Are you talking about rideshare?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, based on where ridership is, we are fairly confident of receiving that revenue.
Okay. And why do you believe comparisons to cities like Chicago and New York are appropriate when our residents have different earning levels, right? Comparisons to those cities.
Those are places that have the tax. So those,
yeah,
those are places
How did you
that have
come
it.
up with that number based off of that? Based off of, like, our city is different in that capacity. Is that why it's $1 compared to New York's $2.75?
Right. Yes, they're higher. We wanted to look at cities that had the tax, and you're right, we are lower. The amount of the tax was based on the amount of revenue that we wanted to generate, and that was based on saving those school district positions.
In 10 seconds, I just want to say, I just want to be on record, you exhausted all options. There was no other way to get to that $50 million this year.
Right,
when
so
you
we
analyzed
looked at our financial position, we looked at the cuts we could make to save money without impacting our services. So we went through all of that before we proposed any increases in taxes.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor. No further questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chair recognizes Councilman Curtis Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. We just left a school, Lankenau, up in the 21st.
Member Jones, can you speak in the microphone?
We
sir?
just left a school, a press conference. Member Thomas, Member Goodyear, Nina Ahmad, where students and parents were concerned about what we are getting for what we are paying. And the question becomes, if we raise you an additional $48 million annually based on Uber, ride share, and then extra money by way of the hotel tax, and that those numbers are projected to make them on balance within 3 years, is that correct?
So they would
Deal with the $300 million.
deal with the 340 positions immediately.
So the question I have in the parents that we just left is, how much of the school closures would save money in that regard to help reduce that deficit? What is the projected number? If they got everything they wanted, closed every school in some of our districts, what would that save them?
So, again, Dr. Deborah Carrera, that is a great question, council member.
I'd only ask great questions.
You do. And I want to say that these are two buckets, right? When we're talking about the facilities master plan, and we're talking about the plan that the school district has presented, and we're talking about how the school district has presented the needs to provide our students with quality, with better. This is different, right? The rideshare tax is talking about saving
I get
340
that part,
positions.
because I'm on a clock.
Right.
The specific question is, how much would all these closures save?
So I would defer to the school district to answer that
All right,
question.
we'll put a pin in that.
Can I do a point
go ahead.
of information? You know, Dr. Derby, you know I'm a fan of yours.
I'm a fan.
I'm trying to understand. You're the Chief Educational Officer for the City of Philadelphia. There's a school facilities plan with the closure of schools on the table. You represent the administration. I know the school board is an independent body, right? You have the chairman, Streeter, you have Dr. Wallington, right? But I also know that when we started off this process in the beginning, like there were conversations with everybody at the table. So I would think that you at least come in and would know those numbers. I'm just being up front.
Yes.
Just for the simple fact that it would be under your purview as a part of overall what we're trying to accomplish, because the support for keeping the 340 positions moving forward is also tied up into the overall plan as it relates to school closures. I know you may say it's different, but I think members of the body feel like it's also, we're asking to do one thing on one end, but at the same time, address a school facilities plan that had dire effects in some areas. And so I just think when a member asked that question, I would just think that, at least on the numbers side, because from what I understand about the school facilities plan, some of it is going toward academic performance, modernization of schools. But we also know from being around this body for a while, some of it is economically driven, meaning in some cases, you're shutting down a school projected-wise because you're spending so much on overhead for a small footprint of educating students, and that's a dollars and cents decision that's being made. And I just think the member specifically saying, there is a number out there. Somebody calculated a number, and there will be some savings, because that's the same conversation with the General Assembly folks on the House side in Harrisburg as well as on the state side. They say you have a structural deficit that you must address, and I know there's going to be savings that's going to come out of it. And so I just would think that we will have those numbers as the head education person, or at least I'll put it this way, out of respect, they should be providing you all that data so you can just have on your own as the chief education officer for the city. But I'm gonna digress to the time, back to Member Jones.
No, well said, Mr. President. So the math has to math. You have to make it make sense to us that why on one hand, we are going to tax people and then take away from people educational opportunities for their kids. I can't knock on the door, say, I'm taxing you, and I'm closing your school because of some nebulous number that we don't know. So one of the cries from the kids was, slow it down. And, you know, they're rushing this thing to help us. They want us to make a whole decision on half information, which I'm just, as one independent elected official, just not prepared to do that. I support fully funding our schools. I support fully educating our kids. Those two things can be true at the same time. But what you're not going to do, what I'm not going to do, is raise taxes on one hand, cut services on the other, and tell them that makes sense. So,
Chair recognizes Majority Leader.
May I respond to that,
Yeah,
Council President?
One second. Chair recognizes Majority Leader Gilmore Richardson.
Thank you.
Point of information.
No, Council President, I'm raising a question of privilege for this hearing. My question of privilege relates to the immediate request of the presence of the School District of Philadelphia to respond to the questions that the members of council have during this important hearing relative to tax bills that relate to figures and dollars that we need answered as the council deliberates bill numbers 260-208. So I raise a question of privilege for the district to appear in this hearing immediately. Thank you.
second, third.
Thank you very much.
So-
Dr. Deborah Carrera.
So I just want to say this very clearly, and I know that I respect this body, and I'm going to be very quick. The district is underfunded, and that's really important to continue to say, and I'm going to continue to say that. The district is owed $1 billion, and I need people to understand that, because when we're asking the district, right, to make cuts, and they're making those cuts, they're making central office cuts, they're making cuts to contracts, we understand, like, if we were owed what we should have received, even in 3 years, right? This was a 3-year decision that was, the courts found that the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is underfunding the state, but the District of Philadelphia, $1 billion. We would have had $3 billion already, Councilman. Could you imagine what we could have done with $3 billion? The district has presented this plan, and they've said from the onset, and I hear you, Councilwoman, they've said from the onset, this is not a budget plan. This is a plan about giving kids what they need. I have been, and you know, I've been an assistant superintendent. I managed 19 schools across the city of Philadelphia. I've been to Southwest, I've been to Comegys, I've been to Bartram, I've been to Rush, I've been to Central. I have seen it all for years, and it's not equitable. It is not fair. Our children need the best. Because you can have a brand new building, amen, if you have a brand new building. That is wonderful. But I was at Elkin Elementary. Where it was hot the other day. And so my point today is that we cannot forget, we are thankful for our legislators, but we have a $1 billion deficit, and we have to do all that we can. And I hear you, the district has said this is not a budget plan. It's about more preschool. It's about more arts. It's about more music. It is about sciences, advanced placement classes. And I know that is not an easy decision, and it is difficult, but we cannot forget that we are severely, chronically underfunded.
So you are filibustering on my time. Let me just.
1 second,
you
Member
know I love
Jones.
you.
Member
but
Jones.
However, and
Member
nevertheless.
Jones.
Yes.
Just real quick, there's a point of information
Go
from
ahead.
Member
I'm
Dr.
sorry.
Phillips.
Go ahead, Doc.
Briefly,
point-
sir.
Real brief, I just want to say that just the point of information is everyone agrees that we have to find a way to get to the funding for our district. It's about how do we find that way collectively, right? We care about the children, we care about our schools, but it's collectively, you all had time to deliberate this, but all of us have not had the time to deliberate this collectively. And we just don't want to go in blindly supporting something without truly understanding the ramifications of that. So that's why we're asking these questions. And if you don't mind, we just want to get to the numbers of how we get to that point, right? And we want to be supportive of you and the mayor, but I think we could find a way to get everything done in a cohesive way.
So
Chair recognizes Councilmember Jones.
I'll yield to.
Chair recognizes Councilmember Bass.
Mr. President, I just wanted to echo the sentiments of my colleague, because it's really quite infuriating that all of these decisions are made without including us. And I want to make sure everyone knows, the viewing public and the public in general, that City Council was not consulted in any way before these decisions were made. It was not discussed. You did not talk to the community. You did not talk to parents. You did not talk to students. And so now, here it comes, I'm in trouble, here's my bill, and fix it. And it just shouldn't work that way. I understand there's not a funding request for the school district that I haven't supported since I've been in Philadelphia City Council. But this is ridiculous to some degree. When we talk about the other things that are in here, it doesn't make sense that we're talking about, using these funds to pay parking tickets and, we're going to charge for the rideshare tax, and saying that the rideshare company has the option of basically turning over the money to the city of Philadelphia. Because from the legislation, as it was pointed out from Councilmember Young, as it reads, the rideshare company is being required to tax the passenger. So it's not that they could ever say, well, we're not going to tax them. This is legislation that we're requiring them to put a tax on the passenger. So I'm sorry, Councilmember Jones, but I just really want to
turns over
that.
time back to Member Jones.
I'm going to wind it down, Mr. President. What I would suggest is the school board, the superintendent, the administration should read the room. This is DOA. And, a lot of people, all of us want to support the kids, but not at the chagrin of the kids. And so, and it's not just in this chamber. We had a lot of state reps, a lot of state senators that are fed up to here with the math not adding up. And so I know Thursday they want to quickly approve the final. I wouldn't do that. That would be drawing a line in the sand that I think they, by not reading the room, will regret. So take it back to them. I, like Member Bass, have been a constant vote for extra school funding. There's not a tax bill that I haven't voted for, but this may be the first. If there is not equity, balance, and reciprocity to our children, I'm not doing it, all right?
So I would just say that I will definitely take the concerns back to the administration.
Thank you.
I just want to add one more thing, and we will definitely take that concern back, that the solution to the district's funding requires both local and state funding. The local funding on its own is not going to math out because we don't have enough ability to do that. But if we don't do our part, it will be harder to get the state.
So we want to do our part. We've always done our part. But we have partners at the state level that need to be held accountable. We're like the custodial parent. And, you know, they asking for increased child support. What we getting for it? And so that's where we are.
I get a point of information, Councilman Lozada.
I'm just trying to figure out this perception that city council doesn't want to support children or that we are going to be the reason for 292 people to lose their jobs is absurd. Lawsuits have stated time and time again that the state legislature failed to fund the schools. So where's the public outcry? Who's holding the state legislature accountable? All of those $1 billion, where is the conversations at? Because they're up right now. They're in communities asking people to support them. But we talk about, you know, this intergovernmental approach. But where are we? When have we been brought to the table together to try to figure this out? Not once. So where's the accountability, and why is it all falling on council people? Why are we the ones that are put on blast about not supporting children? No one on this floor has ever said that we don't support teachers, that we don't support children, that we don't support climate staff. We recognize the importance of that. We know this is about children, but we also represent people that are struggling in their communities who cannot afford to pay another tax.
And
this is crazy.
We've never, to be clear, we've never said that council doesn't support children, and we never would. What we are saying is that the district needs more support both from the city and the state, and that part of that solution has to be more funding from the city to move the state.
Chair recognizes Councilmember Kathleen Gilmore Richardson.
Thank you very much, Council President. I'm back to my question of privilege on behalf of the body relative to the question of us being able to perform the official duties of our positions as it relates to Mason's Manual Legislative Procedure, Chapter 21, Questions of Privilege. I have requested an immediate response from the witnesses here relative to ensuring that the school district representatives come to the hearing today. I am aware that they are scheduled to be before us tomorrow. I'm aware also that the district is scheduled to take a vote on this proposed final plan on Thursday. It is not okay for us to deliberate in this fashion, in this forum, in this body, without the district sitting at this table to respond to the questions that you all are unable to answer. You all are precluding us from doing the performance of our official duties. And so therefore, I respectfully raise the question of privilege again to this body and to the witnesses to please give us an official response relative to the School District of Philadelphia, financial officers, whoever can come to respond to the questions of these members today. When will they be here today?
They will be here
right
today.
Now during this hearing.
Yes, we've contacted them. They are coming. As soon as we know when they'll be here, we will let you know the timing, but they will be here.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Chair recognizes Councilmember Jones.
No, thank you.
Oh, you're saying
I was
thank you.
done. Yes.
Chair recognizes Councilmember Cindy Bass.
Thank you, Mr. President. And, you know, we're still in the same spot because so much of this really just doesn't make sense. And so I'm curious as to a couple of questions that I have. Originally, the request for the charge, the tax on Uber and Lyft rides was 20 cents. The change, I think it was like a week later, went to $1, which is like an 80 cents increase. What happened and why did that change occur? Because I still don't have an understanding as to how that happened.
Sure. So we had conversations with the district and understood that they had financial challenges. What changed in that week was we got information about what the cuts would look like. what the cuts would look like, those 340 positions.
The decision to tax or to request tax without asking that question before? We didn't have that?
So they were still developing that? They were putting that together.
When did we request that information from them?
We had ongoing conversations, but they have to go through their process too. And the timing worked out that they were finished putting that information together just after we finished our budget.
Yeah, that sounds odd. We didn't ask, like the idea that they knew, everyone knows when the mayor's budget address is. The school district certainly knows the date of the budget address. And the idea that they didn't find it, important enough or, just moving to that date to make sure we have a drop dead date, even if you got to work nights, even if you got to work weekends. But what is the amount? And we have to have it by X date. The idea that we change the numbers, I hope you understand, undermines consumer confidence. It undermines the confidence in government because it looks like we're all over the place.
Yeah, and I would say once we heard the level of cuts, we knew that wasn't acceptable, and we wanted to do something to address it.
Did the administration look at the fact that there was no input from the community and no input from City Council with these requests? Is that a
When you say
factor?
no input, you mean on the facilities plan? Or
Yes.
do you want to talk about the process they used on the facilities plan?
So can you ask the question again? You're saying that there was no input from the community on the facilities master plan?
Well, let me move fast forward, because I know there were a series of community meetings, but there was no input on the decision-making to apply this tax or to potentially close these schools. So there was no input on that as
So-
decisions were being made.
So the district, as you said, right, they conducted a pretty 2 years of getting information and input from families. From surveys, they received about 13,000 survey responses. They had about 40-plus different meetings in the communities. And they also had I know there was a facilities plan project team of which I was one, and members from this body were as well. I'm just trying to walk us through the process.
I understand, but when it was time to make a decision about what schools were going to stay open and what schools were going to close, because a lot of these school closures really just don't make sense. And we know that the reason for the closures, the reason that the population at a lot of these schools has diminished is because of action taken by the school district in which special admit schools were changed in terms of how you get into these schools. So you had a special admit school, let's say as an example, like Parkway, let's say it had 500 students, and then the following year it had 250 students based on the changes the district made. So there has been no attempt to go back and correct their changes before you make these drastic decisions.
So I will share that you are correct. And when the district
Let's stay right there.
But let me finish, let me
right
finish,
there.
Councilwoman, let me finish. You're correct in that there were changes made, and I want to make sure I get the year right, whether it was 2021 or 2022. That is correct. However, after that, Dr. Wallington and his team worked very closely with the principals on rectifying that. So those special admit principals were at the table the following years to help develop the criteria for their schools. What I want to share just quickly again is that there is a 65% utilization rate. That means that we have buildings that are underutilized. Some of them have a 25% utilization rate. And when we think about fiscal management, that's not fiscally responsible to operate a facility that is underutilized. And the key is, and I think what gets lost
Let me pause you right there. And I know the bell is rung. But when you shift educational options, if you look at a map of the city of Philadelphia and sort of slice it right down Broad Street, most of the educational options that are alive and thriving and actually overpopulated are in the Northeast or basically east of Broad Street for the most part. And so when you look at where the closures are, they have been mostly west of Broad Street. So what you are doing is really taking away options for a whole section, almost half of the city when you close schools in our neighborhoods. Rather than, where these schools are overpopulated, rather than providing transportation and moving them into some of these spaces, you have schools on the east side that are having classrooms and closets, from what I hear. I mean, it's just really quite unacceptable, some of the learning conditions, because of the overpopulation. This is fixable, is my point. This is fixable. And I don't understand why we're not having those kinds of conversations, but Mr. President, I'll respect the bill.
No, thank you very much. The chair recognizes Councilman Jamie Gaultier.
I had questions for OPA, but I think this conversation is more important. I will cede the time to my colleagues.
Okay, thank you very much. Chair recognizes Councilman Nicholas O'Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning to all who are here this morning. Thanks for being with us. I want to ground us in what this moment requires. The needs in our community, in our city, are urgent: housing, schools, infrastructure, and I agree that meeting those needs requires real recurring revenue. But we also have to be honest about how we raise that revenue and who we're asking to carry the weight of that revenue raising. Because for many Philadelphians, the cost of living is already too high. It's been too high. And when we talk about new taxes on rides, deliveries, and everyday transactions, people are going to feel that. I've been thinking about this all week, and I guess since all the news broke, it's important, I think, for me to say that as a progressive, however you define that, I am against, as a principle, regressive taxes. However, the schools needs money. I think everyone agrees on that point. So I sit back and I consider the administration's argument. This is a billion-dollar corporation or companies that we're talking about, and they could, and I would even emphasize that they should actually absorb the cost. They do not have to pass it on to the riders. That is an important thing to state. But what we also know, because of history and because of what they have said to me directly, is that they are not going to absorb it. They are going to pass it on. I have to appreciate my colleague, Member Young, who lifted the point earlier, which it was beyond me, but I'm glad he made that point. If the legislation, if the text literally says you got to pass it on the riders, that flies in the face of the argument in the first place, and that's got to be rectified. But then I consider that if we know that they won't absorb the cost, they're going to pass it on. If we know that, then where else can we get the $50.4 million that we're looking for? My progressive decarceral mind looks at the billion-dollar police budget that you continue to hold deep respect for. I think you can continue to hold deep respect for Commissioner Bethel and for Chief of Staff Healy and for President Poplar, and not pretend that the police budget is somehow untouchable or outside the purview of this body's appropriation powers. It is not. We could get it from there, but we won't. And we know that it's not going to come out of there. So I'm left to kind of figure out how we navigate this moment. Candidly, it's real hard to separate this from last year's decisions on the business income and receipts tax. The city moved forward with BERT cuts that primarily benefit large corporations and while raising taxes for our small businesses. Now, a year later, we're considering revenue measures that fall more directly on working people. I support investing in our schools, addressing homelessness, maintaining city services. We owe quality services to our citizens. Everyone deserves housing, and we know the schools need money. And also, I want to make sure that we're building a tax structure that reflects our values, one that is fair and that doesn't deepen the inequities that we're actively trying to solve. So my questions are about how the administration weighed those trade-offs and whether more equitable options were fully on the table. Last year, Minority Leader Kendra Brooks and I introduced a proposal to explore a local wealth tax focused on ultra-high net worth individuals. Can you walk us through whether the administration evaluated more progressive revenue options like that this budget cycle? And if not, what has prevented the administration from more seriously pursuing revenue strategies that more directly target billionaires and large corporations who we agree ought to pay that tax?
I can answer it in like one sentence. The uniformity clause. The uniformity clause prevents us from doing what you would want to do with a wealth tax.
Okay. I heard the bill. I'm going to get two more on, if you don't mind, Mr. President. On the proposed $1 rideshare tax, can you clarify how this interacts with the existing state-imposed fee on rideshare trips? And does this stack on top of the current state fee? And if so, what does that mean for the total cost per ride for consumers? And relatedly, have there been any conversations with state partners about adjusting how existing rideshare revenue is allocated? Right now, a portion of that funding is split with the Philadelphia Parking Authority. Has the administration explored directing a larger share or all of that existing revenue to the School District of Philadelphia instead of creating a new tax burden with this regressive tax?
Can you just repeat the first part of your question?
On the proposed $1 rideshare tax, can you clarify how this interacts with the existing state-imposed fee on rideshare trips?
So it is on top of that tax, kind of like our local sales tax is on top of the state sales tax.
And so what does that mean for the total cost per ride for consumers?
Combined, depending on the cost of the ride, but an average ride is about $19, so it would be about 6% of the ride with those two combined.
Okay. And the second part was, relatedly, have there been any conversations with state partners about adjusting how existing rideshare revenue is allocated? Right now, a portion of that funding is split between PPA. Has the administration explored directing a larger share or all of that existing revenue to the School District of Philadelphia instead of it creating this particular new tax?
And we have not had those conversations. One of the reasons that the local option appealed to us is, one, we control it locally, and two, that none of it would go to the parking authority.
So my time has been expired. I have other things I would like to ask, but I just want to emphasize again what Member Young lifted up. If it is in the text of what's being proposed here, that is a non-starter. I think it needs to be that you need to start there and fix that. It is hard for me, who was prepared to come in today, to, as a progressive, bolster the argument the administration is making that billion-dollar corporations ought to pay and not pass this on, even though I know they're not going to do that. I will ride for that particular point. But if your legislation is saying that the riders are supposed to be the ones that bear the brunt, it undercuts the whole argument. You've got to fix that. I think that is a non-starter. Thank you, Mr. President. I'm sorry, Rob.
And to say that companies still collect it, and then they have a choice about what they can do with their pricing.
Thank you, Mr. President.
There's a point of information. And I want to be clear, these are points of information, not opinions. So these are point of information. Go ahead, sir. That's cool.
Thank you, Mr. President. But the legislation says that they have to collect it from the passenger. So I'm not understanding your thinking that it can be anything other than that.
They can make a pricing decision, right, about how they build in that dollar.
But they still have to collect it from the passenger. Whether they build it in some way, they still have to collect it from the passenger.
And then then they make a decision about how they allocate that dollar.
They cannot. They do not have the ability to make that decision based on what the words of the legislation says.
They can do that. If you want, we can get you something in writing from law explaining how that would work.
Please, because the legislation clearly just says, as we look at it, right, it clearly says the TNC shall collect the tax as agent for the Board of Education from the passenger at the time of the charge for the ride and shall remit the tax to the Revenue Commissioner. So please explain any other
then they make a
interpretation
decision
of that.
about how they do their pricing after that. Like they have a decision to make, and they're clearly making a decision that they're not going to offset that cost for their riders, and they're going to pass it on.
That's not. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Dr. Nina Mack, Councilmember Jim Harity, then Member Brooks.
I'm going to follow up on what you said. Thank you, Council President. I'm following up on the point Council Member Cindy Bass made about full engagement in this process. Dr. Carrera said that once this enrollment issue was unearthed due to the problems created by the district, principals were asked to respond to it. I know for a fact in Lankanaw, we'll talk about one school, they asked for permission to have multiple sections of the allowed amount, 33 students. They were not given that. They had asked for use of tier 1 or tier 2, which would criteria to create desirability. They were not given that. And they asked for a name change that would have branded them in a specific way. They were not given that. So all I'm saying is, you asked these principals to do things, they told you they wanted to do these things, and the school district didn't allow that, and now they're being penalized for what they were not allowed to do. So that's one point that I wanted to address that Councilmember Bass brought up. So it's incorrect when you say that the principals did not respond. What I'm saying is, if you really are concerned about this problem of low enrollment, give these schools a defined time to say, a 5-year time period to do these things, show us. If you don't show us, then you're gone, right? But you haven't given those options. You haven't clarified what they have to do, what permission they have to do, and then they fail. That's a different matter. But the school district has not laid out clear guidelines as to how they address the enrollment problem. In Lankanaw, it is nothing else. They don't have a problem with their building. They don't have anything. They have a curriculum that is land-based curriculum that is based on it being a forest, and you're trying to shove that into a farmland. That curriculum will not exist over there because the land in the other school doesn't allow itself to be used in that manner. So if you're thinking, we're going to merge this and we're still going to have the environmental curriculum, it will not work. So I don't know what standards, what data, what you are doing to come to these points, because it makes 0 sense. 0 sense to take the only environmental school in the entire school district, 1 of 2 in the entire state, and you're trying to say we're going to shove it into another school. That is not happening. That is just so irresponsible to have stewards of tomorrow, our environmental stewards of tomorrow, cut off at the knees because we don't know why, because you haven't explained why. And I want to understand, and I know Council Member Catherine Gilmore Richardson asked them to be here. I want to understand how they came to this. Each school, they should have done a score for each school to say, what are they losing? What is the deficit in each school? And how can we address it? They were not given any options to address these things. You're just saying, done. So I cannot understand how you're asking for new taxes to help the school district when they're not operating in good faith. Simple as that. Everything we've seen this far, they are not operating in good faith. We don't know what is the motivation for doing this. We cannot understand the motivation. We're going school by school by school. And we do not understand the motivation because there has been no corrective action done. This is how things proceed. You have a problem, you get a plan, you try to correct it, doesn't work, then you make this plan. But that has not happened in the school district. So we cannot just take one superintendent who wants to have a different vision, suddenly lay it on top. This happened before to the school district. So this is highly irresponsible to come to us to put this tax on poor people, on elderly, on the sick, to say, now you pay more because we don't have a clear plan of how we're going to use the money, because we're still going to cry, no money, no money, no money. And then we're not going to correct it. So you guys have a responsibility before you come to us to say, how are the numbers that we wanted, how are you allocating this? What are the corrective measures? What worked, what didn't work? How much time frame was involved in that? I cannot fathom how you can get in front of us and ask us to do these things. And our constituents are telling us they're going to be deeply penalized by everything you've said today without a rationale, without a way forward. Thank you, Council President. There's really I cannot understand this whole process at all.
Thank you. Chair has Councilman Jim Hardy, then Councilmember Brooks, Councilmember Rulandau.
Thank you, Council President. Good morning. Rob, I've been sitting here with the Beatles song stuck in my head all morning. 1 for you, 23 for me. I'm the tax man.
Excuse me, point of information. What's the name of that song again?
It's a Beatles song, yeah. The tax man, yeah. I'm not going to be known as the tax man. I'm really kind of appalled that the way it's being played here is that if you're not for this tax, you're not for children and you're not for teachers. I'm a union guy, everybody knows that. I'm 100% for teachers all the time. We don't treat our teachers right. But throwing bad money after bad money and keep on piling on, as my colleague said, another poor tax, just like the soda tax. So I like that the Councilman Phillips was asking, and my colleagues are all asking around the same questions too. Yeah, how do we know the projections are the projections and we're going to get this money? Because I remember the soda tax was supposed to pay for all this stuff too, but we're putting $49 million out of the general fund every year. And when I asked about it, you told me that that's the way it was always supposed to be. We knew we were going to have to put up money. So that's where it comes into just piling more and more on my neighbors. I can't do it. At numbers, 30,000 residents in Philadelphia are driving for either Uber, Lyft, or some kind of food delivery service, right? Data shows that the driver's pay is cut 4.5% in cities that impose the rideshare tax. 80,000 trips last year were to or from Kensington, where I live. 60% of all Uber rides and 61% of all Lyft rides in Philadelphia originate from low-income areas. All right? Have we considered the impacts this will have on low-income neighborhoods, both in increasing costs and reducing driver pay as a result? It's like a double whammy for the people in my neighborhood and other neighborhoods around this city, because not only are the drivers going to get less pay and less work out of this because people are going to find other options, but also the people that still use the ride are going to get taxed. Again, I'm for the kids. I'm for the thing, but I don't, how are we supposed to, how am I supposed to look at my neighbors in the face and tell them I'm going to hit them with another tax? Since I've gotten here, I've voted for just about everything that's come down to when it came to the school board, because, you know, that's the right thing to do for the kids, right? But when is enough enough, and when are we actually going to fix something? Fix it. Like, can you answer any of that?
Yeah, I can answer a lot of that, and I'll also ask Dr. Carrera to answer the question about progress being made at the school district. So, to kind of go back to the commuting question, we looked at census data. Less than 1% of people who earn less than $40,000 use rideshare to commute. When we looked at patterns of who used rideshare, that usage went up with income. So that, you know, the higher income you had, the more people were using rideshare. So understand your concerns, and it was stuff that we looked at too. In terms of the school district, and they will be here in a few minutes, they have been making real progress, and we really want them to be able to build on that progress. And we're concerned that if they have to make the cuts they were going to make, that process would start to reverse. And I'll ask Dr. Carrera to fill in more of that information.
Yeah, thank you so much, Councilman, for your question, and we thank you for all the support that you have provided, and all council members here throughout the years. We know you care about the kids. We know you care about the teachers. We know you care about the administrators, and I want to make sure that that goes on the record. The 340 positions, these were positions that were purchased with COVID dollars. And those positions were used to support students in really underperforming schools. The money is gone, as we know, and the school has made progress, because in many of these schools there have been math interventionists, there have been reading coaches. There are schools that have coaches that are working with teachers. These are all practices that work, that move the needle for instruction. And we've seen that. The district has made progress in reading. They've made progress in graduation rates. So these positions are what we are talking about today, and that is why the rideshare tax is being proposed, to support these dollars that were used, COVID dollars. They're gone. And we want to make sure that the progress that the district has been making continues.
So if we close these schools, we're not going to see any teachers lost from the schools that are closed. What happens to those teachers? Where do they go? What happens to the principals of those schools?
Thank you. That is an excellent question. Thank you so much, Council Member. Every year, the city of Philadelphia has a 2,000 teacher shortage. I'm going to say it again. Every year, the city of Philadelphia has a 2,000 charters school districts. And you might say, well, how does that happen? Why is that happening? Philadelphia, Pennsylvania used to be the state where Virginia, other states would come here to get teachers. The decline has been so dramatic because we're seeing many people do not want to go into this profession. So the answer to your question is, as the superintendent has said, resources are spread thin because we have, again, over 200 plus buildings. We don't have the enrollment. So now what's going to happen, as the superintendent said, that teachers are not going to lose their job, but there are schools that have vacancies. There are schools that have math teacher vacancies, science teacher vacancies. So this is going to help fill those vacancies.
Numbers are numbers. I just want to know, now you just said it, if we're short 2,000 teachers, where were we firing 300 or getting rid of 300 and something teachers? We're already short.
Right.
Like, numbers are numbers, and you understand, it doesn't add up. Like, I'm a fairly simple man.
That's right.
And if it doesn't add up for me, I know it's not adding up for my neighbors, but numbers, remember, you're saying we're short 2,000 teachers.
Every year.
But if we don't do the rideshare thing, we're gonna lose 340 teachers, right? Like, well, for short the 2,000 teachers, how are we losing 340
So let me explain that. So those teachers, when we're saying that they would be cut, that means that they will be moved to other buildings. So I'll say it again.
They wouldn't lose their jobs.
They wouldn't lose their jobs.
They'd be moved to
They
other
will be moved to
buildings.
other buildings, and
So
so
no teachers' jobs would be lost.
that is correct. But what we're talking about is
With or without the tax? That's what you just said? No matter what?
Let's just clarify.
No
There be
jobs
no-
lost,
Excuse me,
matter
one
what.
There be
second.
no layoffs?
One second.
Add the numbers,
There wouldn't be a-
2,000 vacant, 300 and something
Right.
that we want to get rid of.
There would be no layoffs. There would be 340 fewer positions in the district.
I think the point also is that I want to make clear,
But we
right?
need 2,000.
But let me explain very
Excuse me,
clearly.
one second.
We've
One second. Excuse me, one second.
1,007.
Member Harity, just one second, sir.
I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. Chair recognizes the Councilmember Isaiah Thomas for a point of information.
Yep, and I'm already last in the order, so it's no big deal. I want to be very clear. You're saying that no matter if we vote for the tax or not, nobody will be laid off.
There would be
Whether
no-
we enact a tax or not, nobody will be laid off.
Nobody would be laid off, but there would be 340 fewer positions, so there would be less
Thank you.
going on in
Well, we need
classrooms.
And can I add to
So-
that? Can I add to that? There will be a disruption.
You get what I'm saying. Do
So-
you get what I'm saying?
One second. Member Harity,
He's the man.
Member Harity.
Yeah.
Floor is yours, sir. And then Ms. Deborah Carrera.
That was all I was, Council President, I got what I wanted. There would never going to be any job loss here. We're short of teachers as it is. We need all the teachers that we can get and can't afford to lose not one of them. And we're not going to lose not one of them because we're short. We need to make up those jobs. The money's there. I'm
Chair recognizes
So I just want
Deborah
to
Carrera.
make this very clear. Those 340 positions are in schools right now, making progress and supporting children. Let's say, for example, Mr. Chuck at Elkin Elementary, climate staff teacher. He's been there for 9 years, right? His position would be cut. That means he would go to another school, but they would not have that position in their school anymore. So the important thing that we have to understand.
18 schools anyway.
Member Harity, we're going to do this, y'all, right? Now, first and foremost, I'm going to point the individuals to speak, right, so we can do this in decency, and everybody can have the opportunity to express themselves. And if you have a point of information, I'll point at you, and you can give your point of information regarding the issue. If it's an opinion, you will wait until your time on which you are called, because you do have other members who have been waiting patiently also to participate in this round. And so with that being said, Member Carrera, please respond
Right,
to
so
Member Harity.
if I'm a principal and I was given 5 teachers to reduce class size through these dollars, and now I have classes at 20 kids each, You take 3 teachers away, they're gonna go to another school, but I'm still gonna have those vacancies in the sense that now I'm gonna have classes with 30-something children. So the goal of these COVID dollars was to support the schools that need the help the most. That is very important. I don't want that to get lost here. And so climate staff, teachers, reading coaches, those positions are gone. Our kids are going to regress, and that is going to be the unfortunate truth, that our kids are going to go backwards because they've made a lot of progress with the support that they've had.
I want to take a moment of personal privilege to point back to Member Harity. Now, Member Harity, your brief response, sir, to your line of questioning.
Yeah, look, the numbers just don't add up for me, Council President. Like I said, I'm not,
Speaking to the microphone, sir.
you know, I don't think anybody's going to consider me a rocket scientist, but math, simple math is math. And if we're short 2,000 teachers, and they said that we would have to lay off 300 and something teachers, where does that come in at when you're already short 2,000 teachers? Teachers are not going anywhere. They're already saying that it's a choice. Your choice was when you decided to shut those 18 schools down, 20 schools in the beginning, whatever it was. That was when you made the decision that people would be moved around, right? So telling us that people are going to be moved around if we don't apply this tax, for me, just doesn't add up. Council President, I will wait till second round or when the school board gets here to ask some more questions of them. I didn't even get to the fact that we're going to let people get away without paying their tickets when other people are paying tickets every day. It's one of the biggest complaints we get in my office. Thank you, Council President.
You're welcome, Member Harity. Chair recognizes Councilman Kendra Brooks, then Councilman Ruth Landau, then Member Young.
Thank you, Council President. I just want to channel some of my members' energy around education. My questions, I did not come directly to education questions. However, just a little history. Historically, the district has given false data to close schools in the past. I'm really excited to see the energy in this current council body around school closures, because when I was a parent fighting for schools, we didn't have that same energy. So I really would like to applaud my colleagues for stepping up in this moment, because this is crucial to communities across the city. And it's very important that we shouldn't get this information or have to ask these questions right now. A lot of this data should have been presented school by school. If it was 20 schools slated to be closed, we should have had detailed information about the why, and those conversations should have been held at individual school communities so the communities, the teachers, and the elected officials understand exactly what's going on, and we don't have to play this shenanigans right here in a budget hearing. So that's my thought on that. But my questions. I want to talk about the tax system in Philadelphia that I have been fighting for. Since I came into council, I have advocated for a wealth tax. This is 0.04% tax on stocks and bonds that would generate over $2 million a year, according to Penn Policy Center. Last year, along with Councilmember O'Rourke, we introduced the People's Tax Plan. We felt it was important to put an an alternative vision out for the city. The plan was called for a wealth tax, an expanded wage tax fund, and doubling the BERT exemption. I have concerns about the decade-plus tax cuts that were put into law during the last budget season. This is part why I did not vote on the budget last year. So as we sit here today, I find it surprising that we are looking for new taxes, many of them that would fall on the backs of working people. I worry our tax system is moving in the wrong direction. Eliminating small business, BERT exemption made our overall tax system even more regressive. We are seeing increases in energy bills and the cost of living, yet we are continually to cut tax on the most profitable corporations in this city. And I want to state this clearly. I am for more funding for the school district. That has been my lifelong fight. I've been fighting for school funding since my daughter, who is now 35 years old, has been in this public school system, and I'm still here today, just in a different capacity doing the same. So I really push back on the fact that if I don't support this Uber tax, that I don't support schools. When all of my children have benefited from public schools, including myself and now my grandchildren, that is not fair to us to do that. Anyway, organizations like Lift Every Voice have demanded an immediate $75 million to stop layoffs. And I think we need to find the funding, but I'm skeptical of the way this administration has proposed to do it. So with that, I want to ask a few questions. I'm going to just get all my questions in sequence, and then you can respond. So I want to ask a question. Has the administration looked into the possibility of the wealth tax? I heard what you said to Councilmember O'Rourke, but according to our attorneys, it does not fall into the uniformity clause, and we could debate that later on, but from our information, that's not what we understand. And why would a tax on rideshare and delivery service be preferred over a tax that would target the wealthiest amongst us? And what other taxes did the administration look at when trying to figure out how to support the school district? And my next question was similar to Councilmember Harity. I'm wondering how the proposed rideshare tax would affect Uber and Lyft drivers. In other cities, we've seen labor unions like SEIU partner with Uber to give their workers a voice on the job. And I was surprised that this conversation around taxes, we haven't focused on the drivers at all. What is the city doing to ensure that Uber and Lyft drivers have better working conditions? And have you had discussions with labor advocates about how to improve driver working conditions and pay, as Councilmember Harity suggested? And those are my questions.
I think the first question was about, actually, can you go back to the first question?
The first question was about what other taxes did you look at when considering how to support the school district, and why would a tax on rideshare and delivery services be preferred over a tax that would target the wealthiest amongst us in the city?
Yep. So we did not want to do a broad-based tax. We didn't want to do an increase in property tax or the wage tax. We wanted to do taxes that we could target at the services we could provide. And since there was the rideshare tax already went to the school district, we went to that tax. We can't target the wealthy in our taxes. We're not allowed to under the uniformity clause. And we did look at rideshare usage and did see that it went up with income, but we can't target the wealthy in our tax system.
The other question, so those are the only taxes that you looked at when it came to funding the school district, the ones you just mentioned?
The broad-based, yeah, yes, that's what we looked
at. Okay, and my other question was around, what did you do to ensure that the Uber and Lyft drivers have better working conditions in the discussion, or have they had conversations with the labor advocates around improving driver working conditions and pay, considering that they're also going to be impacted by the increase in fare that's passed off to to the community?
Yeah, we have not had those conversations.
Thank you.
O'Rourke, there's a point of information, correct?
Sir, isn't it true that you can target specific industries with taxes?
Yep. Do you want to take this one?
Okay.
State your name for the record, please. Begin.
Good morning, Kathleen McColgan, Revenue Commissioner. We do have, per legal guidance, we have the ability to tax BERT by NAICS codes, industry codes. However, that is not something that, those codes merely reflect the industry and does not make any distinction between a large business versus a small business. So for example, that industry code would capture a small corner store as well as a large grocery chain.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, sir. Councilman Ruland Dow and Councilman Jeffrey J. Young.
Point of information.
As a point of information, Member Jones.
Yeah, to my colleague's point, this body has often identified specific taxes towards industries, whether it was tobacco, whether it was the beverage industry. You just cannot separate the big from the little. I don't know if we fully explored all of the possibilities of places that we might be able to levy a fair tax onto people. And I just urge us to keep all of our options open before we double down on our kids, double down on closures, and double down on a poor people's tax towards rideshare. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, sir. Councilman Ruland Dow.
Thank you. I want to take just 1 second to kind of comment on a lot of what is being said here. I agree, we have done some very creative taxes in the past, and I just want to, most importantly, what's happening here, what I've seen happening since the times the school district comes and talks to us, especially this year, is a sheer lack of communication, honesty, working with us as members and working with community people when it comes forward to what they're trying to do. And what happens is we start distrusting, we are severely concerned about what's happening, and then we start hearing different answers, and I've got to tell you, without building that trust and that understanding and giving us real numbers and real facts, we are automatically going to be against what you're talking about because we don't think you're telling us the truth. So I got to tell you that that's what's happening here. We have taxed many things in the past. It is not as simple to say every element of Councilmembers Brooks and O'Rourke's wealth tax are all impossible to do based on the uniformity clause. I don't believe that is true, and I do think we can be creative, and we can come up with this money. So I'm going to start with some broad questions and get into more specific. But I do want to lean into what Councilmember Lozada was asking about whether or not the city is continuing to push the state on the $1 billion that is owed to us. We have a Commonwealth Court decision from 2023 that says that the school district of Philadelphia must be equitably funded. It's clear as day. They worked 2 decades on this campaign to get this court ruling that tells them exactly what we should do, and they backtrack by saying, oh, we're going to create a commission and come up with a formula and do the best that we can. The state owes us this money. They must pay, and then we will have all the money that we need to make our children and our teachers thrive.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Council Member. Yes, to what you're just saying. So we are working with the state. We brought partners together to talk about the adequacy funding. We've thanked legislators. Again, we got $135 million last year, $135 million this year, and it's $1 billion, right? And so we are working to, as the mayor has said, when we go to Harrisburg, we also have to show what we're doing as the city, because it's important. I worked at the state. I've been at the General Assembly. I was the Executive Deputy Secretary for the Secretary of Education. We need to show that we are also doing our part as a city to provide that local revenue within the limitations, as you've heard Rob DeBoe talk about. So I know the district has just walked in, and I'm sure that people want to hear from them as well. But Council President, can I make a point of clarification? Thank you. Absolutely. So I just want to make sure that the positions that we're talking about, the 340, they would be transferred to other buildings, but that would impact the schools that they're in, because they have been serving those schools, working with the children and making the progress.
So just for clarity, those 340 positions, they would just be transferred somewhere else, and they wouldn't actually be in the current schools that they're in.
Right, but I don't want to lose that point, because that is a big issue.
I think the way it's being conveyed is that in the event that this funding isn't approved, that 340 positions will be totally eliminated. That's different from being transferred. So those people still have a job, they just will have it somewhere else, and they just won't be in the current positions that they are in. Is that what I hear you saying?
Yes.
That's accurate, but that school would now have fewer positions. So they'd have fewer teachers, fewer
Yes.
counselors, fewer climate staff.
Point of information, Member Isaiah Thomas.
Just so I can understand clarity, why would the 340 people being moved under your recommendation be more important than the staff at Parkway, Lincoln Hall, MCS, Robeson, and all the other schools that's been moved in the past? So if I'm understanding correctly, you're telling us that we need to do this so that those 340 staff members don't get moved. But in your same facilities plan, you're going to move the staff at Lincoln Hall. You're going to move the staff at Parkway West. You're going to move the staff at Parkway Northwest. You're going to move the staff at Robeson. You're going to move the staff at Overbrook Elementary School. If I add up all the staff in those schools, that equal more staff than the 340 you're mentioning. So please explain to me, why would we care that you're moving 340 staff members when your facilities plan moves more than 340 staff members? Point of information, I just don't understand it. Can you please explain?
Can I respond to that?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Councilman Thomas.
Floor is yours.
When I was here the last time, I talked about how I moved Kensington Kappa into a new facility, and I'm not sure if you remember that. When I was at Cumberland and Coral, we moved from Cumberland and Coral, an entire school, to Front and Berks, we moved into a new building, right? My entire staff moved with me. I moved, my teachers moved, my climate staff moved, my counselors moved, my students moved. The superintendent has said repeatedly that next year, 26-27, is a year of transition and planning. These are the pieces of information and the work that has to be done because we don't want to disrupt children. We want to give children what they deserve and what they need. And when you're talking about resources being spread thin, a kid cannot have Algebra 1 if there's no math teacher in their school. They can't use a lab if there isn't a lab.
You did not answer any of my questions. You just proved my point. I agree with everything you're saying. So why does the 340 you're talking about matter more than the 400 that I'm talking about? I agree with everything you're saying. So why are we moving any of them? How can you testify here today? A point of information. I'm trying to get clarity. How can you testify here today that the problem that you have and you need this tax is that we can't disrupt 340 staff members, but simultaneously ask us to approve a facilities plan that disrupts more than 340 staff members? I'm just trying to get a point of clarity.
So there's a point of clarification, Councilman, and I appreciate you and I honor you today, and you know that. You move the 340 adults that are now in schools. Those kids will not have that math interventionist. They're not going to have that reading coach.
Neither will the Lincoln kids.
They do. If they
neither will the Warrington kids.
Those teachers from Lincoln, the counselors can go to the school. They can go to
So can the
Saul High School.
340.
Say it again.
So can the 340. Every point you make about Lincoln Robeson, Warrington, Overbrook Elementary, I'm making the same point.
No, but
about
they would follow. They would follow.
I got to stop, Council President, because I'm not getting my point of information clear. So I'll move on.
Point of information, Councilman Jim Hardy. Information, sir.
Since they brought it up, point of information, right? Farming and environmental do not go together. Environmental people protest farming people sometimes. You understand? Methane, all kinds of other things. It's not always the same, and it's not interchangeable. The environment is the environment. Farming and small animal husbandry is something completely different, and that's what Saul is. So you're talking to putting a Saul, which is a farming school directed for small animal husbandry and avenues of that sort, and then throw environmental kids in there that are supposed to be studying something else, and the effects of the farm animals and the farming are going to affect their environmental studies. But again, I'm not a rocket scientist. Thank you.
The chair relinquishes time back to
Thank you, Council
Member
President. I appreciate my
Ruland
colleagues.
Dow.
I feel I'm not getting to the questions I want to get to, because I've got to say that I'm feeling the tone and the tenor today, and I know the school district just came, so I do want to ask a couple of large, big picture questions, which are one, Uber and Lyft and other rideshare companies and package delivery companies are multi-billion-dollar corporations. Did you have any conversations with these entities about whether or not they would perhaps donate some money to our school district of Philadelphia? Did you have any conversations with them to ask whether or not, when it starts to rain a little bit, that they wouldn't do surge pricing that would make somebody's ride 3 times the amount that it is? Did you have any conversations with them that when you had a ride that might take a little longer because you've got a wheelchair, that they don't add some sort of fee, on, some sort of surge pricing onto that as well? The question is, did you go to the billionaires and ask for a little bit of support here before this happened? And my second question is going to be whether or not, because we've talked to a lot of constituents in this process and a lot of colleagues, is there a thought that we could offset just now some of this funding with the fund balance that we have, which is millions of dollars?
Yep. So let me do that second part first. So as you know, we have to do 5-year plans. They have to be balanced in each year of the plan. For the reasons I was talking about in my testimony, by the end of the plan, our fund balance is only in the 46 million. So we don't really have room in our fund balance for this. In terms of, we've had some conversations with Uber. The issue with their contributing money is that's not recurring and predictable money, which is what the district needs.
So just one more. By the way, don't we have a fund balance of this year at 391 million now?
We do, but like I said, we have to do a 5-year plan, so that projects out for the 5 years.
Excuse me,
Gets down
Rob,
to the
real
40.
quick, just a quick point of information. We're gonna be pointing all day. Sorry, sir, that's what we're here for.
Quick point of information, the fund balance is only that number if we approve the budget as is. As of today, the fund balance is over $1 billion. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you.
Thank you,
This
sir.
is it's a good tag team day we're doing here today. I appreciate that. I also wanted to know whether or not there was any considerations for, I'm kind of torn about this, I've got to say. There's a whole transit community that is looking for support for transit as well. And there's ways in which they've been fully left out of this conversation. And have there been conversations and considerations for any other place that funding could go? And would you share your list of potential revenue generators, of which rideshare was on that list? Would you share the entire list with council?
So the first part about transit, in our proposed budget and 5-year plan, there's almost $900 million for SEPTA, including our annual subsidy, zero fare, the SEPTA Key program. So there's a substantial commitment to mass transit in the 5-year plan already. On the list of options, we can get you something.
Thank you. Done for now.
Thank you very much. I'm going to do this. I'm going to stick in this round, but at the inquiry of Majority Kathleen Gilmore Richardson, I'm going to ask for the chairperson of the school district, the chair of the Board of Education, Mr. Chairman Reginald Streeter, to please approach the table, as well as the superintendent of the school district of Philadelphia, Dr. Tony Wallington. I'm going to still stay in queue during this round. The chair recognizes Councilmember Jeffrey J. Young, then Councilman Jamie Gaultier, then Member Thomas. And I just want to just kind of put it into context, what kind of spurred this conversation for you to also be here is based upon some numbers that we requested at the questioning of Councilmember Curtis Jones Jr. regarding how much savings will the district save as relates to the shutting down of the schools that are proposed. What's the dollar amount, just for the record?
Thank you, Mr. President. So I didn't expect these witnesses to be here, but I'm going to ask questions based on that anyway. So we are asked to support a rideshare tax that is equal to roughly 1% of the school district's budget. Can you tell us what has the school district done internally to try to come up with this 1% before asking taxpayers to pay that additional 1%?
Thank you for being here, and apologies for not being in the suit. I was expecting to be here tomorrow and took time from my day-to-day because the council president himself asked me to be here, and I respect you. We have a really great working relationship. So if my answers aren't as full as they will be tomorrow, I will do the best that I can with what I have in my head. That being said, before Dr. Wallington answers this question, we have a $300 million budget shortfall. The Board of Education and Dr. Wallington have presented for the last 5 years a pie chart that clearly shows a deficit, a looming deficit that was coming, and signaled the type of changes that would have needed to be made as well. From my understanding, the Clayton Center, which is the organization, the part of the organization that services our schools, is half the size it should be for a district this size. That's my understanding. Dr. Wallington is implementing a hiring freeze as well. And Dr. Wallington, is my understanding, you will obviously add meat to the bone to that. There's already been some works internally to try to save as it relates to not renting out spaces instead of using spaces in the district for things like professional development and things like that. So that's the problem we're having. And then I heard when I came in, Councilmember Rulandau talk about the $1.2 billion of being historically underfunded as well. So again, we are pushing a boulder up a hill with no shoes on, sliding as we can, trying to get this thing up the hill. And any amount of money that can help us to protect the positions and things like that will be helpful for the school district of Philadelphia. But Dr. Wallington, time's yours.
Thank you, President Streeter. Good afternoon, Mr. President, members of council. Councilmember Young, we've taken several steps to address the $300 million structural deficit. On the one hand, we are making significant cuts to the tune of 130 positions in the central office. We're starting there because we want to do everything we can to protect the classroom. I will say to you, number two, we're taking a look at all of our contracts in the school district to cut where we can. Three, we're taking steps like we no longer use the Pennsylvania Convention Center for principal meetings. We've made Strawberry Mansion High School our professional development center. We are curtailing staff travel, including the superintendent. Instead of sending 4 teachers to a reading conference, we may just send 1. Or we may send nobody and just bring professional developers to the school district. We're also looking at every opportunity for efficiencies that we can find in the budget. I do want to note that when we had the COVID-19 dollars from 2020, when the pandemic hit, 2021 through September 2024, we didn't have to make cuts because we had a much higher funding level. The reason we've got to make cuts now, and this is completely separate from the facilities plan, there are 2 separate issues on the table as I see it. The structural deficit.
We don't see it that way. So I just want to make that clear. We don't see it as two separate things because the pot of money is still coming from the same place.
But that's actually not accurate. You have a capital budget and you have an operating budget, right? A percentage of our operating budget can be used to borrow up to borrow as it relates to debt service. They are two different issues. One issue is 70, 80 years of deferred maintenance, and the other is reoccurring things that we have to do to support student learning outside of our buildings. They are different topics. They are different situations.
So thank you for that. So the city controller mentioned that the transfer of the percentage from the millage shift and plus some increased revenue from the state made up for the COVID losses, right? This is from the city controller. Can you explain to us if this is the city controller accurate here in this assessment, in this statement, or is there something that she's missing when this was issued back in August?
Councilmember Young, I think it is accurate and appropriate to say that changes in the millage rate help to offset some of the funding that we no longer have. I would just note for the record that this district received approximately $1.8 billion from the period 2021 to September 2024. Once all those once-in-a-lifetime opportunity COVID-19 dollars are gone, we are unable to completely make up that revenue shortfall.
And can I add briefly that the Board of Education, with the use of the COVID dollars, often had to come here to City Council and defend our being tight-fisted with the fund balance and things like that, because we knew this day was going to come. And we strategically used our resources in a way and had to tell the babies no when we wanted to say yes, because we knew at one point we were going to be here when those funds run out and have to answer these questions, while also trying to communicate as every year, coming before City Council at our meetings as well, there is a huge structural deficit issue coming as well. That's not included, that's not the same as the facilities issue as well. So I just want to also put that on the record that the Board of Education has been good stewards of public dollars. We tried to support learning, and sometimes we've gone against our own willingness to kind of not go into the fund balance, to do things such as that made sense, that matter, that have been requested by City Councils. Well, I'm happy to go into that list as well if needed.
So over the past couple of years, so the school district has dipped into its fund balance in order to kind of maintain itself, it seems like. So that deficit, knowing that you will have this type of structural deficit, what did you do internally to try to avoid having this $300 million deficit?
I'm happy to answer that question. So there was a strategy within the strategy. The Board of Education, Superintendent Dr. Watlington and Dr. Height invested in student learning because there was a nationwide strategy to not just use the funds for capital investments, of which we actually did use those funds to build facilities, add drinking water, clean drinkable water in our facilities and things of that nature, but the board also doubled down on student achievement. And the strategy was, had the last election gone a little differently, that perhaps those funds, those COVID funds that we would have got from the federal government would have been reoccurring. But as we all know, elections have consequences. And we thought that strategy would have been a more prudent strategy, not just for Harrisburg, but also for the federal government. And we can show you right now with data. I know it's not the gains we want to have, but it's about student achievement. And we believe that in addition to all of the things we're talking about here today, it's important for our babies to know how to fish. We want to protect legacies. I know the facility issue is in the room. We want to protect, I'm from Germantown, my high school closed. What I'm most appreciative of is the education that I had that allowed me to be at work today as an attorney and come here because I have the ability to do so, to come and testify before you. That's what we're trying to protect here. We're trying to balance all the interests, but at some point we are at our knees and we have to do something about it, because if we don't do it, somebody's going to do it to us.
Mr. Chairman, I would like a point of information, Mr. Thomas.
Again, I'm just confused again, and I just need clarity. So I'm listening to Councilmember Young's questions. I listened to the chairman and the superintendent's answer. Earlier today, Mr. DeBoe told us that the reason that we seen that big jump from 20 cents to $1 was because they didn't know how bad the deficit was. That's what we were told earlier today. And now the board president just told us for the past 5 years, he's been making noise about this issue. The board president just said he knew this day would come. I'm confused. I need clarity. How is it that they knew this day would come, and they've been asking for this and screaming about this for 5 years, but we were just told earlier today that the other side said they didn't know how bad the deficit is. So listening to the response to questions earlier compared to the response to Councilmember Young's questions there, I'm just confused and I'm asking for clarity. Did we know this 5 years ago or did we just find out?
Council President, may I respond? Knowing that there's a deficit isn't the same as knowing exactly what the board and the district's prepared to do in order to cover the deficit.
Oh, no, I'm
That's
talking
what
about
saying.
I'm talking about Mr. DeBoe.
So that's what I was talking about.
No, I understand what you're saying. You saying you knew.
No, what I'm saying is I knew that we were going to have a deficit.
Correct.
But I didn't know that Dr. Watlington was going to be in the kitchen cooking it in a way to try to figure out a way to cover the deficit in the way that he did.
And I commend him for that.
So
but
that's different what I
that
said.
doesn't answer that doesn't give me my clarity. We were told earlier today that they just found out about this problem, which is why it went from 20 cents to $1. That was the response to a question earlier today.
So we're going to ask for a response from Mr. DeBoe.
Yep. What I said was, we knew that they had a big deficit. What we didn't know is how they were going to address it. And when we found out how they were going to address it, that's when we shifted our proposal.
And may I just add, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, that I'll say two things. It's no secret that the school district of Philadelphia, I think everybody in this room knows, there's been issues with deficits and structural deficits going back to the days of Dr. Arlene Ackerman and Paul Vallis when he was the CEO. I think we all know that. What Mr. DeBoe is saying, I can absolutely support and tell you is true. As we've looked at this deficit, I decided, and the team, that we have two recommendations to make to President Streeter. Number one, continue to kick the can down the road and leave a deficit for the next superintendent and the next superintendent and the next Board of Education and the next Board of Education, or separate and apart from the facilities plan, that's a separate issue, deal with our structural deficit and develop a plan to pay it down and to once and for all eliminate it by fiscal year 29-30. Mr. DeBoe did not know that we would go that aggressive in terms of our thinking and how we would, as we worked on the budget, to eventually bring to President Streeter and his board members a plan to eliminate our structural deficit by 29-30.
A point of information from Member Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. And a point of information is statements, not questions.
Yes.
So I shall have statements and not questions. Statement, you got to read the room. When you walked, when this day started, you had 9 votes for Uber tax. The way my council math works, you might be at 6, maybe, all right? And it's heavily weighted on statements like, this is our last and final offer, we're closing these schools. And the math is not mathing. That when you say you're closing the school, what is the savings that will get you closer to the $300,000? And we asked that question, it was not answered, all right? And if that savings is not really savings, but designed so that you have better professional development locations, I think 404 North Broad is pretty high. It's not bad. There are others that are there that we could kind of squeeze staff into. I just don't see why we are fixing things that aren't broke. You got performing schools, they're under-enrolled because we put in a system that keeps students out of seats. You got neighborhood schools where the climate is so good. And you know, I tell, and I'm going to end on this, I know what schools are hot and which ones are not based on the number of parents that want to get into a school and then the number of parents, please, Councilman, get me out, my kid out of here. And these schools, I never get a problem from. And so that's a statement. It's not a question, but read the room. And that's not just here. That's at the state level. I can assure you that's at the state level as well. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Member Harity, point of information, and then relinquish the time back to Member Young to wrap up.
Fines is a point of inquiry. So because, well,
Speaking to the microphone, too.
we were told earlier that, well, we know COVID money was one-time capital expenses, but we were told earlier, the doctor said that they used the COVID money for the teachers, and that's why we're going to be 340 short. Why would we use one-time dollars in order to pay for something that we knew wasn't going to be recurring? I know you just said the administration you thought was going to be the same, but that's a 50-50 gamble there.
If I could respond briefly, COVID was one of the most devastating times in our history of our country as it relates to our children and public education. We decided that it was important not to be derelict in our duty to ensure that our children would not have the losses that other cities have lost, and we've got notoriety nationwide to ensure that they can still read, write, do math, and be protected and serviced in the way that they could. That is why we did it that way. So imagine if we only spent money on buildings. And I think that's the problem with this whole conversation. We're focusing so much on the facilities. We focused on people. And when you focus on people, and that's what this facilities plan is really trying to do, when you focus on people and allocating them in a way that services the mission why you exist, amazing things happen to our children. Again, I went to Germantown High School. It is closed. Closed. But the one thing that I could take with me, I can't take that building with me. But I could take the fact that I have the ability to be an attorney, to be an amazing bartender that I was able to be before I became an attorney, to protect and provide for my 4 babies at home. That's what we're trying to do here. So it was a strategy, and it actually worked. And elections have consequences, and we know that. But we were on the track to, for the first time ever, potentially have reoccurring funds from our federal government to move up our 0.5%, what we get from the federal government, up to us to 5%. That is a game changer. So that's why we did it. We want to invest in our babies and our children. For too long in this city, we've invested in things that don't service our mission. We just have. And this Board of Education, through Goals and Guardrails, is seeking to do that. And the facilities plan is connected to that, connected to the strategic plan that seeks to do what we are designed to do, educate the babies so they can fish for themselves. So they don't grow up and say, I like that school there, but I can't get out the neighborhood or do anything because I don't have the skills to do it.
Mr. Young, wrap us up with this final question, and I have to call on the next person. So.
Thank you. I'm just want to get a little bit more clarity on the school-based positions that are proposed to be cut if this $50 million isn't received by the district. So we've heard testimony to say that, well, no, there will be no jobs lost, but those school-based professionals will have to be transferred elsewhere. And so if that's the case, why do they have to be transferred elsewhere if, they're still going to be employees of the district?
Thank you, Councilmember Young. Here's the answer. In a large city like Philadelphia, where you have 200,000 public school children in the district-operated and the charter public schools, and you have really small schools, and you have really large schools, and you have super under-enrolled schools and super over-enrolled schools, you got to balance how you use those limited resources and positions. So if I'm in a school where I've got a very, very low population of students, but I'm funded at a level of positions that's higher than we can afford to do, at some point, you've got to right size, and it's not personal at all. So
we got to do that regardless then. It doesn't matter if you get the money or not. You have to right size regardless.
And so our plan to try to keep as many people in the house who's in the house, because we don't want lots of layoffs, we devised what I think is a really strategic plan to project all the vacancies out. And if we can't afford to continue to fund some schools at a certain level, because the pot is only this big, we cut the positions it makes sense to cut, and then we're transferring them to where we know we will have vacancies next school year. It's just simple math, it's not personal. And we broke down how these positions break out by the 10 council districts so council can be aware. A historically underfunded school district where we have a structural deficit that's not caused by the Board of Education or the administration, it's caused by 3 things. Number one, this is a historically underfunded school district, and you've had structural deficits for decades, and we're going to eliminate it. Number two, it's driven by we no longer have COVID money, Number three, it's driven by increases in personnel costs in terms of raises. Four, it's driven by charter school payment increases. And number five, it's also driven by, finally, the increases in health care costs. This is not a mismanagement issue, it's just economics.
Excuse me.
Thank you.
Excuse
And
me,
I just want to say that you have a top 20 municipal budget in the country, right? When you take into cities, districts, you have a top 20 municipal budget. And so I just ask that you think a little bit differently when it comes to how we allocate $5 billion worth of resources when you have a population of 200,000 to serve.
Point of information from member Dr. Nina Ahmed.
Thank you, Council President. I have a point of clarification I need from all of you here in terms of how much thought went into putting this closure plan together, which is part of your the entire plan. So, I'm a scientist. I like to disaggregate my data and talk about specifics. Talking about Lankanaw, January 22, Lankanaw was going to be merged with Roxborough, and then February 26th, it was going to go to Saul. So you had how much time to come up with this plan that you had done that option, and then quickly within a month, you switched to another option. Point number one. Point number two, as my colleague Jim Harity pointed out, Saul focuses on production agriculture, including horticulture, animal management, and agricultural mechanics. Lankanaw does not. And the way Saul is set up, the land is set up, does not allow to do what Lankanaw does. You cannot take it and put it in there. So this is not a sound educational planning. Merging Lankanaw into Saul would not preserve Lankanaw. It would erase what makes Lankanaw distinct. And for us, for you not to point that out, that you're willing to erase Lankanaw's, you can say that. It's not important. We're going to erase their curriculum. We don't need the only environmental school in the district. Say that then. But do not say that you're going to be able to preserve this when you had given 1 month thought of moving from one school to another. I want to understand, what is your thought pattern? How did you get to this? And what is the data that supports you saying that, oh, Lankanaw will be fine in the Saul space because we have land that is bisected by Henry Avenue and we have all built environment on both sides, and you're telling me we're going to be replicating what 17 acres does with 400 acres surrounding it in this new space. Please give me that information.
Thank you, Councilmember Ahmad. I'd answer that by saying three things. One, as we said before, the reason why we're doing some school mergers at the high school level is that we can no longer continue to afford some of the measures that Paul Vallis put in place years ago with the smaller high school model. We just can't staff it and drive improved in performance. We can't afford to do it.
I need to just interject here, which means you're saying you're not going to keep the Lankanaw environmental science curriculum because you cannot do it at Saul.
And the second thing I'll say, we are absolutely committed to supporting Lankanaw and its students on the Saul campus by doing the following. A, the district will retain ownership. I've recommended to President Street and his board that the district maintain ownership of the Lankanaw property for use both by Lankanaw as well as other students across the district as a science center inside of the school district. You would say, well, why don't you just leave Lankanaw there if you're going to keep the property? It's, again, we can drive faster and better resources into our high schools if we address small schools. I've discontinued from my vocabulary the term small boutique high schools because I understand that's offensive to some.
Oh.
But I do stand by we can no longer afford to operate the small high schools and to continue to drive the kind of improvements that we're beginning to see in academics.
So just another point of information. Right next to Lankanaw, which they use, is the Schuylkill Science Center the Environmental Science Center. There is no need for a new environmental center because we already have one. So why would you use your precious resources to build a new center when we already have ability to use that, number one. Number two, you have not allowed Lankanaw to actually fix the problem so that there will not be a drain on your resources. So that if you were to increase the enrollment, that would obviate the problem you're mentioning. So if we can fill that gap, and you've given them 5 years to do that, to prove that they're able to get the enrollment up. If you have 3 classes of 33 each in each of these divisions, if you allowed different levels of specification for the schools, we would be able to turn that around. But at no point has there been an action, this is before you came, I made this point already. At no point has there been a clear, thought out plan that didn't pivot in 1 month to tell these schools that are under the gun that you have X amount of time to do X amount of things, and this is how we're going to do it, or else we're going to have to move on. And there's nothing wrong with small boutique schools, by the way. They actually are safer, they teach the children better, so I don't know where this thought has come that we have to all merge into these massive schools. Who asked for that? Do you think there's actual relevance for that in our Philadelphia? So I'm just telling you, what you've done makes no sense when you look at it from a data perspective. In 1 month, you shifted everything from Roxborough to Saul. How much thought went to that? How did you account for all of these things that Lankanaw does in 1 month in Saul? And you're going to put aside land, you're going to recreate what they do, because the Schuylkill that runs through that is a polluted Schuylkill, whereas the Schuylkill that runs through Lankanaw allows you to do water preservation and all kinds of activities that they do that you will not be able to do in Saul. So either you're saying there's no environmental school, or you're saying, it doesn't really matter because we're just going to subsume this into an agricultural-based school, and that you should just be honest about it.
Councilmember Ahmad, in that spirit of transparency, I do want to say the data does not show that just because kids are in smaller schools, they perform better. I won't embarrass any school in public, but I can tell you some of the small schools that we're referencing are I don't think any of us, I certainly am not pleased with some of the performance levels. But to your point about the Schuylkill Center and the Lankanaw property, not only would Lankanaw students have access to use it, although they would not be located on that campus, so would other students across the city. Relative to the small school phenomenon, it's no different than a university. If you're at some small universities and you've got lots of resources, it's one thing. If you're at a small university that can barely afford to keep the doors open, I'm not sure that's where I want my child to be.
So I'll just wrap it up by saying, show your work. You didn't show your work for that what you did in 1 month to switch. That's all I'm asking. Show your work and tell us the truth. Thank you. Thank you for your
And you're still in the queue, so that's a very informative point of information. Chair recognizes Councilman Jamie Gauthier, then Councilman Isaiah Thomas.
Thank you, Council President. Good afternoon, Dr. Watlington and Board President Streeter. I appreciate you all coming into this hearing. I appreciate the Majority Leader for making this happen. At different points, you all have expressed, Dr. Watlington, Board President Streeter, Chief Education Officer Carrera, that you believe that these are two different conversations, that we are having a conversation about the Uber tax and that the facilities plan is somewhere over here. And I think the tenor of this room has been what it's been all morning because neither council or our communities view it that way. You are asking us to do something that is difficult. You are asking us to do something that at this moment feels very unpopular, and that's fine. We are legislators. We are expected to do hard things and to engage in hard conversations. The problem is that you're asking us to engage in this difficult conversation and decision with you while simultaneously telling us that you're not going to listen to us or our communities. That is the problem with this entire conversation, because that's not what partnership is. That's not what partnership looks like. I appreciate some of the changes that you revealed yesterday in your amendments to the facilities plan. I appreciate that you are recommending $100+ million for the 3rd district over what was there before, and that you are scrapping the recommendation to give our facilities over to developers, including the Robeson property. I appreciate those changes, but if we're being honest, those were massive deficiencies with the original version of your plan. And so though I appreciate those changes, for me, the changes don't go far enough. I have talked to you for months, Dr. Watlington. I have talked to you for months about pulling Robeson off the closure list. After months of advocacy, you looked me in my face on more than one occasion, and you said, not only to me, but to other elected officials that represent that area, that you think we can revise that recommendation. And you knew full well that what we were asking for in a revision was to not look up at your slide presentation to the press yesterday and see closed Robeson still on that sheet. None of us were asking for that. Our community was not asking for that, and you knew it. That's not partnership. And so, for me, this is about so many things that are disappointing and traumatic to our community. One, Robeson as a school has made enormous leaps and bounds since the last time that they were put on the closure list, because these processes tend to traumatize the same Black and brown communities over and over again. But they pulled themselves up and they worked really hard to become a better school academically, as was noted by yourself, by the governor, and by many others. The other thing that's traumatic about this is you all saying that we're going to reserve the land for school district use. We're maybe going to build a STEM-focused school there, but we can't go that extra step of saying that that new school will be Robeson High. We can't go that extra step of pulling Robeson off the closure list. That kind of attitude is carrying out the same legacy of erasing Black people in University City that has happened in my district for decades, and it's not fair, especially since you cannot tell me why. You did not, I talked to you all yesterday evening about this. You could not identify a concrete reason why we couldn't keep Robeson open, especially if we were keeping the land for school facility purposes. So to us, it feels like you're not listening. But at the same time you're not listening, you're coming in here and asking us to do something hard for you. How dare you do that? How dare you? How dare you rush this plan to a Thursday vote when you haven't even taken the time to fully engage our communities, but then come in here and ask us to do something hard for you? That is why the tenor of this conversation in the room today is what it is, because partnership doesn't look like that. And so my questions are, why can you not remove Robeson from the closure list? Why can you not do a co-location that is temporary while we build a new facility, as opposed to a merger that would completely wipe out the legacy of that school? That's my first question. And I want to know, I'm looking for actual cost, since the cost seems to be an issue to you. Secondly, I also put forward other alternative recommendations that would keep Blankenburg, the last public high school in Mill Creek without an admissions criteria, in the district. I recommended that it be co-located with Parkway West. Why would you rush a plan to the school board on Thursday without even giving full consideration to that idea, without even coming out to West Philly to really talk to our communities about that idea? Please speak to those two questions, because to me, having that conversation while you're asking us to do something hard is what partnership looks like.
Thank you, Councilmember Gautier. In terms of the notion about it being a rush plan, I would just remind the council that I came aboard just over 4 years ago, getting ready to start year 5. Shortly into my tenure, I was questioned in front of this council with Board President Streeter about when can we expect a facilities plan on our desks. I think the district was admonished for not moving fast enough. Over the past 4 years, I can send to Mr. President, to the council, a list of all the engagement sessions with members of council, with communities, with the district learning networks, et cetera. And I think it would show robust engagement, best-in-class engagement for a district this size. Number 2, the immediate problem we're experiencing at Robeson is that the building has a poor building score. I cannot, in a good fiduciary sense, recommend to go in and renovate that building. It's not good business sense. It's not good use of the public tax dollar. Some buildings, it's not a good use to go in and renovate and upgrade. They're better off being replaced. Number 3.
I don't think that the community has definitively objected to that.
Sure.
We want to build a new facility. I'm not sure what's prohibitive about what you just said.
Sure. And because we originally recommended to move the students at Robeson to William Sayre as a way to increase the sizes of the high school so we can push more resources in so that they can have advanced placement courses, have the resources for band and orchestra, and maybe even some athletics equipment and things that kids in the suburbs get that our kids, quite frankly, don't have in these schools. I want to be really clear about that.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how good we say these schools are, I'm telling you, they're missing a lot of stuff in addition to having a poor building score. We modified that recommendation because there was such strong opposition. And we thought, hey, motivation is another opportunity. There's no pride in authorship. We don't have a problem making adjustments as the community and our elected officials inform us.
Let me just pause you for a second. Was it your understanding that my community was asking for Robeson to be disappeared into motivation as opposed to Sayre? Is it really your understanding that the community was asking for the school, was just choosing between the schools that Robeson should disappear into? Or was it your understanding that the community wants Robeson to still be in our community?
It was my understanding, and continues to be my understanding, that Councilmember Jamie Gauthier and her constituents prefer that there be no changes and that the Paul Robeson High School not be merged anywhere at this time.
Correct. Thank you. So please speak to the rest of my questions. You stated yesterday evening that we must do a merger for Robeson. We cannot do a temporary co-location that would keep the school alive while building a new facility and then bringing them back. Why can we not? What are the real numbers and the real barriers associated with that?
One of the challenges we're experiencing in the school district, and quite frankly in the city, is that the real root problem here is district-wide, the school district of Philadelphia has a 65% building occupancy or utilization rate. 35% of our footprint is sitting empty. Mm-hmm. It's not a good financial management or an investment.
My question is, why does a merger as opposed to a co-location in the same building solve that problem? How does it solve that problem?
So to your point, Councilmember Gauthier, we could have two choices for a school. We could take two high schools and merge them together and have one school, one principal, one set of faculty. Or we could have two separate schools in the same building.
Which already exists in the
New York City
building.
has a lot of that. Other cities do it. And we could have one principal, one set of faculty for school A, one principal, one set of faculty for school B. The reason I'm not recommending to President Streeter and his board to do that for Robeson is because the size of Robeson and the size of Motivation High School are small, number one. neither school is growing in enrollment, and neither school has a high wait list. If we're going to make this school district solvent, we've got to provide choice where there's high demand, and it's my job to recommend those really hard decisions that I don't really want to do. But if we have a larger school merged together, I can push more resources in to include teachers, to include advanced placement courses, elective courses, career technical education, and we just can't do it when we have so many small schools.
We are dealing with monumental decisions that will impact communities and people for a long time. And so before you say that you're going to wipe out a school that the community has begged you to keep around, I think you need to come to the table with real cost, with real barriers to why we can't do a co-location as opposed to a merger. You all are asking us to consider the tax that, granted would generate $48 million, but would be passed on to consumers, and we should consider that. But I don't think it's fair for you to want us to dialogue with you in good faith about what you need from a financial perspective when you won't dialogue with us in good faith. That's not okay. It's not okay for you to rush this plan to a vote on Thursday when you didn't even come out and really talk to our communities about the recommendations on the table. It's not okay, it's not partnership, and that's why the conversation has gone the way it has today. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Councilmember Isaiah Thomas.
I want to say thank you to our majority leader for bringing the district here today, but I'm going to save my questions for the district for tomorrow. But I do think that the district put some important facts on the plate that we need to consider. I want to go back to our conversation about taxes. I personally, last year, asked for the mayor, the admin, to increase the percentage of the millage tax last year because I knew that the funding issue was a problem. I have receipts. I don't got time, so I ain't giving up all my receipts. I'm 100% sure that I knew this problem existed last year. I'm 100% sure that the council president's staff, along with other members of the city council, knew this problem existed last year. So I have a simple question, and I'm asking that you tell me if it's A or B. Somebody dropped the ball. Did the school district not tell the admin that this fiscal problem existed last year, or did the school district tell the admin and the admin decide not to address it? Which one happened last year?
From the school district side.
I'm sorry, I want to speak to the admin side. Because you testified that you guys didn't know about this deficit. And I'm 100% sure I sat in this very same seat last year and talked about this deficit. And I even remember sitting in that seat, going back and forth with my colleague, Rue Landau, around home, because I said we shouldn't do home because we needed the money for schools. So if I knew the problem existed last year, how y'all going to sit here and tell us y'all didn't know the problem existed last year?
So we never said the problem didn't exist. What I testified this morning.
So if you knew the problem exists, why we ain't put money in last year?
Can I answer the question?
No. If you knew the problem existed, why you ain't put money in last year?
So what we talked about last year, we did talk about this very problem last year. Did not say at any point last year there wasn't a projected deficit, because there was.
So why didn't you put the money up last year?
Was that we need the state to step up. That this isn't something we can do.
We knew the state wasn't going to step up. I knew the state wasn't going to step up. I ain't been here that long. Y'all been here longer than me. If I knew the state wasn't going to step up, and I said we need to put the money in last year, why we didn't put the money in last year?
So the state has a constitutional obligation to step up.
And they haven't been doing it, and we had to sue them. Let me move on to my questions because you're playing with me, and I'm not in the mood to be played with. Extended day. Why would we, if I own a house, and I can't keep my basic house repaired, why would I add a porch to a house that I can't keep repaired? If we knew we didn't have the funding to make sure that schools were funded the way that they needed to be, why would we add extended day? Why would we make school all year round if we can't pay for school from 8 to 3?
Extended day is allowed.
I'm talking to them. I'm sorry, Dr. Watlington.
Yes,
I'm asking money questions. Don't talk to the school district tomorrow.
Thank you, Councilman Thomas. Extended day, extended year is part of the Accelerate Philly plan, and it is
I'm very familiar with what plan is a part of. I'm asking a very specific question. If we knew we didn't have the money to keep the lights on, why are we spending money on vacation?
Extended day, extended year is not vacation.
What is it?
Extended day, extended year is supporting the School District of Philadelphia by providing opportunities for students to get academic and enrichment opportunities to support
So why would
the
we
Accelerate
add these
Philly plan.
things? Why would we add these things that happen after 3 o'clock if we can't pay for everything up until 3 o'clock? Next question.
We would add these things because we know that out-of-school time helps
But you can't pay for in-school time.
It
How you gonna pay for
decreases.
out-of-school time when you can't pay for in-school time? Next question. Mrs. DeBoe, if we didn't do home last year, will we have enough money right now for schools? Yes or no? Matter of fact, let me change that question. If we did home at $400 million last year instead of $800 million, will we have money for schools? Yes or no?
We would not
Okay,
have enough money.
that's
for
not
schools.
true. Next question.
It is true.
Next question. The fund balance right now is set, according to your words, to be at $400 million at the end of the 5-year plan. Why would we oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Member Thomas, point of information. Member Kathy Gilmore Richardson.
I have a point of inquiry, Council President, to drill down on Councilmember Thomas's question for Mr. DeBoe. If you could notate for the record how much would have been saved if home was at $400 million versus $800 million? What is the quantifiable amount relative
About-
to the debt service?
About $30 million a year.
The debt service difference from the $800 million borrowing to the $400 million would have been how much per year?
About $30 million
So it would have been
difference in what we show in the budget, yes.
$150 million over the 5-year plan?
No, because the second bond issue comes later, so it would be less over the 5-year plan.
I'm just trying to get a number based on his question.
Yeah, so I think the second didn't start till 28, so it would be about 90 million more over the plan.
90 million. Thank you very much, Council President.
So like I said, it wasn't true. Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry. Another
Chair
point of
recognizes
information.
Dr. Anthony Phillips.
No, 90 million more would not give us enough to fund the school district.
Neither will your tax. Neither will your tax.
The tax
Go ahead,
gives us
I'm
enough
sorry,
to save
Councilman.
340 positions.
Let's do this. Time out. Chair recognizes Councilman Dr. Anthony Phillips.
But Council President, thank you. This is Mr. DeBoe. This is why I think it's important that once an idea is shared that you all would like to see, that it immediately, whether or not you wanted to get out to public or not, there should be conversations with the stakeholders that you want to see, support it with all of the data, all of the ideas that you all have come up with in the plan. That way we can provide a level of deliberation. So the question is that I have, because I say this because even with my own team, I have an idea, right? Emmanuel, some other folks are like, other stakeholders I work with, they're like, that's a good idea, but you should talk to this person, and we end up changing our idea, and it becomes better as a result. I don't just jump out. I'm talking to you, Mr. DeVille, because you're the mayor's chief advisor when it comes to finances. And so my question is, did you, at one point, did we ever say, let's talk to council, then also let's talk to the rideshare services, and maybe we came up with said, maybe the rideshare services could have said, you know what, if you do this tax, this is what we're going to do. We're going to give it to the residents, but maybe what we can offer is a certain amount of money back to the city of Philadelphia if you all work with us. Did that option ever come up as an idea to kind of work with the corporations to give the money to us as opposed to the tax?
Yeah, so we've met with them, and we have said to them, if there are other ideas, we're happy to hear them, but those ideas have to have recurring predictable revenue.
Right, and do you know that just the city of Philadelphia receives revenue from the sports teams recurring, so that agreement could have been made. I just wanted to ask, did you offer that as an idea, recurring revenue that they could just donate so we can support our schools as opposed to doing it through this tax?
We did have that, we've had that conversation with them, yes.
And nothing came from that?
We're still talking, we have ongoing conversations.
Okay.
Chair recognizes Councilman Isaiah.
Closing out real quick, with the school's deficit the way it is, and I looked into this issue a couple years ago before we came into 2026 because we knew a lot of people were coming. So I examined the hotel tax. I worked with folks that did a study, and it was presented to us that it wasn't worth it. if the school's deficit is the way it is, why would we, if we're going to ask Harrisburg for anything, why would we not ask them to increase the cigarette tax where the revenue goes directly to the schools instead of increasing the hotel tax, which could hurt hospitality and have a big and can have a negative impact on our entire industry? Why would we not ask them for that?
Because the hotel tax generates more revenue than the cigarette tax, so a smaller increase in that tax.
But the
generates
industry
more.
says that y'all not correct. The industry says that y'all estimates are too high, and the industry feels like an increase in the hotel tax. Not only is the $100+ million that you're asking for over 5 years not realistic, the industry says it could kill tourism. That's what the industry says, not me.
Yeah, I know. I understand what you're saying. For a $200 room, it's a $4 increase per
Okay,
night.
so I guess the industry is lying too. Everybody's lying, right? And I don't know. Everybody there is telling the truth. Everybody else is lying. I just want to close out with this, Council President, because I heard the bell. I've been on my best behavior all budget. I've been on my best behavior all budget. And I'm here today, and I'm upset, and it's not personal. But myself, Councilmember Gaudier, Councilmember Ahmad, Councilmember Rorick, Councilmember Jones, and I'm sure other council members experience this too. We started off our day with special needs kids. I had to stand next to a young lady who is blind. She's blind. She goes to a school where she's very comfortable and everything works for her. And you telling me about 340 staff, what about the deaf children at Lincoln Hall? What about the blind children at Lincoln Hall? So my energy ain't personal to y'all. It's not personal. But come on, y'all. Like, this ain't right. Y'all asking us to do some of the most ridiculous stuff I've ever heard anybody ask me to do, and then go in front of black kids and tell them kids you can't go to this school no more. That hurt. That's tears. So I get it. Yeah, you're going to be mad, oh, Isaiah did this, Isaiah did that. I don't care. Them kids is going to be adults pretty soon. And I can tell y'all, that young man looked me in the face. He said he going to run for office. He the one who going to decide on my pension. Like, y'all not taking this serious enough. And that's why, that's what my colleagues are saying. That's why we're so upset. It ain't about y'all. It ain't even about the teachers. I love the teachers, I really do. But come on, y'all. Come to Lincoln Hall with me. Look at them deaf kids and them blind kids. Tell their parents to their face, you got to go to Saul. I get it. And I said this at the press conference. Maybe you could take the environment on the outside and put it at Saul, but you can't do that with the environment on the inside. And if you've been there, you would know that. That's it. I'm done for the day.
Thank you, Member Thomas. Councilman Rulandell. And we have a hard stop at 1.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for being here. I think I want to start by just taking a minute of reading the room, trying to understand a little bit more school districts of where you guys are coming from. I will be honest how I feel, how you come to this space. You seem annoyed with us. You seemed like we are just kind of pestering, and that this is not the conversation you want to have or the place to be. But I want to say that I'm going to go back to my first comment, which was that all of the work that could have happened before now, those are the courageous conversations that need to happen. Getting in front of the community, working with the council people. When I hear that you've come up with a solution for certain parts of the 3rd district, this all could have been front-ended. So you're hearing clearly that we're upset, and we see that you've come to this space to be frustrated, but there's a lot of work that could have happened up until now. I believe that Superintendent Watlington, when you had a one-on-one conversation with each one of us, I recall you saying that you all made the choice to eliminate the deficit this year because you keep going out to Harrisburg, and in Harrisburg, they don't look kindly to the city of Philadelphia, saying, we don't want to give you more money because you keep holding this deficit. And that your reason for getting rid of the deficit all at once in this 1 year is because you believe that Harrisburg will give us more money. What evidence do you have that Harrisburg will give us more money if we eliminate the deficit in 1 year, rip the Band-Aid off?
Before the superintendent speaks, I want to address the energy in the room piece. Please don't take my energy as being disrespectful to the space. I welcome you to board meetings often, and we have conversations there. My energy is at the fact that we have to have this conversation in the first place, all of us. I think we have been put into a cauldron as a city, fighting over scarce resources, and we're all fighting for the babies. And I think we all agree on the what and the why. We are disagreeing on the how. So please, if anybody felt that my demeanor, not wearing a suit today, I would have wore a suit. I was prepared to speak tomorrow, but I wanted to address that, Councilmember Landau, that this is really important work, and I think the energy that we're bringing is that we're also trying to be zealous advocates for our babies. But Dr. Watlington, please add your time.
I want to say three things. I'm trying to be very succinct. Council President likes to get to the point. To show you how bad historic underfunding has been in the School District of Philadelphia, I want the council to think about this. Congress appropriated the COVID money for two reasons, going back to Councilmember Harity's comment or question. Congress said we're going to get this money out to the 50 states and 15,000 public school districts. Number one, to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 learning loss. That was number one. Congress said, number two, school districts may also use these dollars to address air quality issues to mitigate future airborne illness, COVID-19, and future pandemics. So that's why some districts were able to build schools and do some other things. It was around air quality. In my last district, we actually provided retention bonuses to teachers. Here in Philadelphia, because the district is so underfunded, this district, even though people think the budget is so big, had to not only try to deal with learning loss, Dr. Bill Hite had to take as much of that COVID money and fill the holes that funding is just not providing. Here's the best example. While most districts would not spend COVID money on positions, this school district hired 127 assistant principals with COVID-19 money. You let me recommend to President Streeter to cut 127 assistant principals, and every member of this council would be not happy. That just shows that here the money had to go to plug a lot of holes. The reason why I think we can get more money is not because I'm Pollyannish or somehow naive. In 2023, the Commonwealth Court ruled that the way we fund schools is unconstitutional in this Commonwealth. The General Assembly has started on a path, as well as the city, to get more revenue. It's just going to take time to get to adequate funding. Our best estimate right now is that it'll take a decade at the rate we're going. Our kids can't wait a decade, so I'd say that first. Second, I don't disagree that we can take some measures here in Philadelphia to help ourselves and then go to Harrisburg, the appropriate elected officials and others, and make the case that we're doing our part, you do your part. I don't have any magic wand or crystal ball, but I do think it puts the city in a stronger footing when we say we don't have 35% of our school buildings sitting empty and asking for more money.
And if I could be brief, I think one of the elephants in the room that the board is constantly worried about and guarding against, there's a statute that is still viable in our state where we can lose local control again if we're seen as being financially in trouble. So the Board of Education understands we will guard that to our grades, because we understand the impact that about 20 years had on our city of Philadelphia, and we're starting to put things back that were taken away and rebuilding public education. So I think that's one of the elephants in the room we're not talking about. It's not just about getting more resources. It's not getting things taken away and done to us again. That's part of the analysis too.
Appreciate that. I don't think that was a little bit of a direct answer to my question that you said.
Member Landau, I'm ready to wrap it up, so.
I would
you have
like.
to be brief. and you're gonna have them all day tomorrow. We all will have them all day tomorrow.
This is,
So
okay.
I'm just being frank. They stopped what they were doing to come temporarily, but we will have them all day tomorrow as well. So can you be brief and wrap it up, and Majority Leader?
The question was, why do we have to eliminate the full deficit this year? I understand how it got there.
I'm
And
sorry,
I
I didn't-
understand how this mark would look bad for potentially losing local control. I'm asking that specific question.
We are not proposing to President Streeter and his board, I want to say this on the record, we are not proposing to pay down and eliminate this deficit in 1 year. This is a 4-year plan. We are recommending that President Streeter and his board take these austerity measures to the tune of $225 million in fiscal year 26, 27, and that we continue to trim our budget over the next 4 years such that by fiscal year 30, we will once and for all eliminate the structural deficit in the school district of Philadelphia.
So the significant amount this year, the largest amount this year.
The longer
I
you
just-
kick the can down the road, the more interest and the more you
I'll
pay.
end with this. I've been a lawyer for a long time. When a judge orders that someone has to be evicted, they have to leave their home. When a judge orders that someone committed a crime, they go to jail. When a judge orders you have to pay someone a certain amount of money, you have to pay that amount of money. We got to figure out a way to get this money from the state. The judge ordered it in 2023. We must be adequately funded. They owe us money. Let's go get it. End of discussion.
I wish it was that simple, though. I'm just being frank, and I come from that body. You have a strongly controlled Republican Senate, and that no matter how much my good friend and Appropriations Chairman Jordan Harris does, or my little sister, the Speaker, Joanna McClinton, do, at the end of the day, unless we take control of that Senate, right? I mean, it's good to say it, but I'm come from that body. But we will fight and we will advocate for that additional funding because it is our constitutional responsibility, their constitutional responsibility. But I'm also approaching it pragmatically and understand the reality of what that environment is. We're on the front line in the city of Philadelphia fighting for these babies because most of them up there can care less, to be quite frank with you, unless you're from city of Philadelphia and the surrounding area. And some folks may be in the counties, to be quite frank with you. But I'm going to turn it over to Majority Leader Gilmore Richardson to wrap us up. We're going to have a brief, we're not going to do an hour-long lunch today because the public is here. And I expect all this energy that's here will also be here to listen to what these public individuals who took their time out of their schedule to come down here to say. Majority Leaders, take us home.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Council President. And first, thank you to Rob DeBoe and to Dr. Deb Carrera and the additional representatives from the administration, as well as our school board chair, Reginald Streeter, and Dr. Watlington, and your team at the school district. I requested your presence here today at this hearing to respond to a financial question that was posed by Councilmember Curtis Jones relative to the school district budget that the administration was unable to respond to. And I felt that it was unfair for us to have this debate in the public forum without having that information as requested. And so I requested you all to be here. I appreciate you coming. I understand that you're going to be with us tomorrow, but I wanted to ensure we could have a full conversation today since we were unable to get the financial question answered from the administration. And I did mention the CFO, so I didn't say anybody specific. I just want to be clear that I didn't ask for anyone specific outside of the CFO who could answer the financial question. I wanted to put that on the record. I also wanted to state for the record, and this data comes from the District Quarterly School Manager Report, that from fiscal year 21 to fiscal year 26, City Council has increased our contribution to the School District of Philadelphia by $513,602,000 $100,000 since over FY21 to FY26. I wanted to put that on the record because that is an important figure to state for the auspices of this conversation. I'll end with this question because of the time frame we have this week. We are meeting with you all tomorrow. I understand that you all are scheduled to vote on the facilities plan at the Thursday meeting. I am formally and officially requesting of you, Board Chair Streeter, and also Dr. Watlington, in the presence of the officials from the administration, that you commit to us on record to move that facilities vote to either the 4/23, April 23rd action meeting or the May 28th action meeting of the school board and the School District of Philadelphia. Are we able to receive that commitment as we continue to deliberate the facts and the figures of this plan, as well as the other information that has been presented that we have been unable to give full and complete answers to?
May I have the dates again, please?
Yes, the dates are, you have an upcoming action meeting on April 23rd as well as May 28th.
And what was the request?
And the request is that you not vote on the facilities plan this Thursday, but commit to moving that vote to either the 4/23 action meeting or the 5/28 action meeting to allow City Council the opportunity to deliberate on all of the information that has been presented, as well as continue to get the answers to the questions that we have that were presented today around the tax bills. And that would be Bill 260202, 260203, 260204, 260205, 260206, 260208, and 260209.
Today, I'm not prepared or even empowered to even answer that question. We are a board as well, so I'll have, obviously, I know this question is going to come up tomorrow, and I'll be ready to respond tomorrow.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Council President.
So for the record, tomorrow you'll report back is the two dates requested will be even approved or not approved based upon your discussion with your board members, correct?
As the board president of the Philadelphia Board of Education, I will testify tomorrow and respond and answer that question.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. We will be back at 1:35 on brief break.